Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Katie Halper Show. Thanks for your patience. We had some tech issues, a lot of tech issues. We have a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about fascism and January 6th. Was it fascism? Who even knows? Unclear. And we're going to be talking about that with Omar Wasow, Jason Stanley, and Sam Moyn. And then the second half of the show will be an amazing chat with Ali Abunimah, who founded Electronic Intifada. And that'll be about Israel. And we have some announcements and stuff. But before we start, please make sure that everyone has liked the stream, subscribe to the stream. And to do that, you hit subscribe and then the bell. Also, I have an annoying tech setup today. It's one of those days where everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. And so I realize I'm on this like annoying angle. It's kind of slanted. I don't get why. It's just a book that I put it on. But you'll notice the difference, and hopefully it's okay, and you'll forgive me. What else? So yeah, we're going to bring in anything else I need to say. Tell me in the private chat. That's something that not everyone has access to. But I think that's it. I think we're going to bring in the co-host, the old co-host. Oh, of course. And, okay, a couple more announcements. One is it's Brad's birthday, so everyone wish Brad a happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Brad. And please support the Patreon at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. All you need to do is you can pay $1 a month. $1 a month, that's it. And you can help make this show happen. And that's a cup of what? The price of $1 a month is the price of a cup of coffee. That's a yearly cup of coffee. Also, you could pay more. You could pay like $5, and then you'll give yourself access to extra episodes. So all of that's good. All right, enough of the pitching. Let's get on to the show. Bringing on my co-host, the host of AM Jack AM. That's right. The Twitch show. And Jack Allison, thank you for coming on.
Happening? Good to see
What's
you,
happening? You too.
Thanks for having me again. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, always a pleasure to have you. And also, I want to wish you congratulations on your co-host. Leslie Lee now has a master's. People may know if they watched the last show.
He's a master's of art now. He is now a master's of art. I asked Leslie, I'm not that educated, and so I asked Leslie what that means, and he told me it means he's officially more educated than Chris Hayes.
Oh, yeah, that was how he framed it on this show also.
Good,
yeah.
Good. Well, that's what he told me as well. So at least he's staying consistent. He's not a flip-flopper.
No, he's not a flip-flopper. How's this? Is this better? I'm just working it's so sad. I look like I'm so in the shadows. You guys are getting your mugs. When are they getting their mugs, Nick? When can we tell them? I'll tell you by the end of the show when you'll be getting them. And Jack, when was your birthday?
It was on the 18th of this very week. It was on Thursday. That's when it was.
Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you text me and say, hey, Katie, wish me happy birthday?
Do I do that to I'm not supposed to tell everybody that it's my birthday.
I know.
Apparently, my birthday is wrong on Facebook because a lot of people were saying happy birthday to me like 2 days early because I think I'd probably just put it in wrong or something like that.
Well, maybe because you're self-effacing and you don't want to be wished happy birthday.
I mean, it's all right. I had a fine birthday. It was a perfectly fine birthday.
Just perfectly fine?
I got the call KD, which is a harrowing one from my father that he's like, I'm actually exactly half his age right now.
Oh.
I'm exactly half his age, and so now I am half of my father's age. So won't that be some fun, huh?
You know what you need to sing? That song by STP, Stone Temple Pilots. Remember that? One? Half the Man I Used to Be. I'm trying to. Yeah, you didn't think of that one before,
no, I didn't.
Did you?
I didn't think of that. Well, I don't really know Stone Temple Pilots.
You don't know that song? Well, I'm half the man I used to be. No?
I feel like I kind of recognize it. I don't know.
Anyway, yeah. Anyway, so we have a great show, as I said, and we have some things to talk about. What do you want to talk about, Jack? Anything on your mind?
Jeez, what's on my mind? Well, people in your chat were mentioning that, my new glasses, and they are a couple weeks old, but people were saying that I got new glasses.
Yeah.
And I wanted to draw a little bit of attention to the fact that, Kamala Harris's stepdaughter, Ella Emhoff, did her runway debut this week, which is very exciting. We would all be just as excited, right, if Charlotte Pence had started becoming a model during the Trump administration, right? Like we would have been just like, yes.
Yeah.
Although I should say that Charlotte Pence did get a job at the talent agency UTA while her father was vice president under Trump.
Wow.
But I do want to draw attention to the fact here that Ella Emhoff has stolen my look.
Not
in a big way. There's Ella Emhoff in the gold aviators with long and shitty curly brown hair.
But you don't have bangs, and that's what you need.
Excuse me.
No, you're right.
Ella Emhoff has completely stolen my style.
I don't know which is you and which is her. Hold on. Let me think. We should do side by side. I'm going to have to guess. I think that, let's see. Now, Jack, now you're really showing it. Well, now it's me and Jack, and I can tell the difference between me and Jack. But you know what's funny is that you and I have kind of similar hair. Oh, you know what? Hide me so people can actually just see you two. Before you put the headphones on. No. Yeah. Can you leave them off? Because I want people to see.
I'm going to try to hear you still, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Here, let me do this. Hold on, watch this. How do I make it so it's just you and her?
Oh, right.
Shit,
okay,
I want you and... No, I wanted the other way. Anyway.
So then maybe I have to remove you.
Yeah, kick me out.
I'm going to kick you out, and I'm going to put up this. Okay. There we go. I mean, it's uncanny. It's absolutely uncanny.
I'm kicked out now. Yeah, for a second there, I was lost. I was, I couldn't tell, yeah.
I'm going to remove my...
Oh, he's good. What,
Katie's got to be on the left.
Oh, Katie on the left, right, exactly. Yeah,
I don't, it's not right. It's not right.
It's not right. It's not right. It's the left. Yeah, I'm in a different room. I'm having some heating issues, so I'm in. Wait, is this Ella? Who am I talking to? Ella?
No. This is just me. This is not.
It's just Jack.
This is not Ella Emhoff, the daughter of the entertainment lawyer that married Vice President Kamala Harris.
Wait a second. Lisa Mojica is saying hers aren't aviators.
I guess they are a little bit rounder, but I still don't think it's right. I still don't think it's right.
It's not right.
I don't think it's right.
No, it's not. It's not right at all. Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyway.
Congratulations to her. And like I said, we would have been just as excited for all of Mike Pence's daughters. I will say that I watched a little of her runway thing, and it does look like she's in an underground bunker away from where the riots are going to be. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. Well, Ella, or that's ironic, not Mike Pence's daughter. But,
not Mike Pence's daughter, Ella.
Right. Ella. Yeah. Was she named after Ella Baker?
I really could not tell you.
I doubt it, but I could imagine that. So let's see, what do you guys want to talk about before we bring in our first panel? We got Neera Tanden, we got Adam Carolla being...
Can I say that I'm Team Manchin? I'm Team Joe Manchin now in a big way. I don't even care. I'm Team Joe Manchin now.
I know. Here's the thing. I don't know if people know about this, but basically, you know Neera Tanden, dear friend of the show, very good friend of show, Neera Tanden. And she is terrible for many reasons. She's been nominated to be Bernie Sanders... No, sorry. She's been nominated to be the director of the Office of Budget Management, OMB.
Yes,
Office
OMB.
of Management.
Management and Budget, I guess?
Yeah.
She's in charge of the budget. They want to put her in charge of the budget.
Yeah, which kind of makes sense. You know why? Because she did suggest, as we know from seeing from WikiLeaks, she did suggest that we bomb countries and then steal their oil.
Yeah.
So it kind of was a good idea to put her on the budget because that shows really out of the
That's
box
fiscal
thinking.
Responsibility.
That's fiscal responsibility.
That's what that is. Yeah. That's being fiscally conservative in a big way.
I mean, yeah, it's good. It's austerity, and lots of people talk about. I wish I'd done a mashup of this, but her lived experience.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that. But lived experience is basically it's like identity politics. But the problem with her lived experience is it's like if I came from economic hardship and then grew up and said I understand economic hardship, but was actually cutting the programs that helped me as a child, that's what her lived experience is. Yeah. Right?
And it's like also it's like what do I give a fuck about someone's lived experience if they're doing bad things? You know what I mean?
No,
like, I don't care if somebody experienced it and then went on to like make life worse for other people. It's like that just means that you're even worse.
Well, no, it's much worse, especially when you're pretending. This is like one step away. I don't know if I said it on this show or Useful Idiots, but this is like one step away from like a Ben Carson who made it and then thinks everyone who hasn't made it is boring.
Right.
Or
like
not
lazy.
boring. What the hell? Why did I say that?
Because
boring.
you're talking.
Oh, what happened? The sound went out. Uh-oh. Is that me?
Sorry, did my thing disappear for a sec? Sorry about that.
That was so boring. I got so bored when you're...
said boring because you're talking about Ben Carson, and there is no
he's
other
so
word
boring.
that comes to mind. Yeah.
I mean, he every now and then is exciting because he talks like a serial killer when he talks about operating on children's brains. We'll have to find that later. But it's a fun thing, and it happens. But am I in sync, by the way? Am I lagging, or is it good?
Seems fine. I'm a little worried my camera cable is coming undone, so I'm going to touch that real quick.
All right. Yeah. Touch the cam cable.
There we go.
All right, cool. So I'm just shutting out some programs, actually. So here's the thing. So Neera, now, why do we dislike Neera? Because she's into austerity. Because from WikiLeaks, we know that she said don't sweat it about the $15 minimum wage, which for her is actually pretty like low key. I thought she would like just vilify minimum wage earners. And also she did shove her subordinate in the chest.
Faz
Shakir, yeah, she did. Yeah. She shoved him in the chest. But to be fair, he was asking for it. You know
let's
why?
Also be because he was asking a tough question to a donor. Is that correct?
He asked Hillary Clinton about her Iraq War position.
Right. So I mean that is fair enough. You deserve getting pushed around a little.
Yes,
for that.
physical. Yeah, corporal punishment is the appropriate response to a young staffer. That's what you do. Yeah. She did, and she didn't deny it happened. She just said it was a shove, not a push. Can you imagine?
Let's be fair here, Katie. A lot of that stuff is from like 10 years ago. So let's talk about what Neera has been doing recently, which is, there was a sexual impropriety scandal at CAP, and then she named the person who was the victim in an all hands meeting, named the victim by name, and then also did broke a union. Think Progress was trying to start a union, and they fired all of them. Yeah. Was the blog side of Center for American Progress, and they fired all of them to break the union. So she's a union busting, sort of victim shaming, welfare cutting ghoul.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And now, look, is what I'm about to say important? No, but the irony is that one of the things I like about her is that she fights with Republicans, right? Online. Now, I don't like that she fights with leftists online, but the irony is that like Manchin, also, people are saying it's misogyny to oppose her. I'm sure there's some racist misogynists out there. That doesn't motivate me in hating Neera Tanden. And Joe Manchin, I don't know what it is. Is it that she insulted? Because she's kind of Trumpian online. She's Trumpian on Twitter.
Yeah, and so Joe Manchin, we should catch everybody up, is saying that he plans to vote against Neera Tanden's confirmation to be the head of the Office of Management and Budget. That, theoretically could block her nomination if all the Republicans vote against her. Now, listen. There's a part of me that thinks that what the hell is her name? That one of the I can't remember her name right now, but one of the Republican senators will vote for her.
Heidi Heitkamp.
Heidi Heitkamp was the person I thought originally, but
Susan
that's
Collins.
Susan
Collins.
Collins is who I'm thinking might vote for her, and so this might all just be a big political theater for no reason.
But I'm still going to become a Manchin donor because of it.
The sad stab in the heart of it all might be that like Bernie votes to confirm Neera after all the horrendous things that she said about him, and that she gets through for that. But look, also people are saying that maybe Manchin is trying to say he wants to, not vote for Neera so that he can like have the keep his centrist credentials when he votes for the fucking COVID package or whatever. But he is saying, which of course that would be the best case scenario of all, if like Joe Manchin, tanks Neera's confirmation and then votes in favor of the COVID package, that would be great. But listen, the reason why he's saying he's not voting for her is mean tweets, and of course that's some silliness, but I don't give a shit. I don't like Neera, and I want her to not get confirmed.
Exactly, yeah.
And so I don't really care.
I don't care.
And you know what else I have to say about, Manchin is it's like, however you feel about Manchin and how he's going to vote on Neera Tanden, we do know that he's always going to be a solid vote against ACA repeal, right? I mean, don't we just know that he's always going to be a solid vote against ACA repeal?
Yeah.
I mean, I should say here that this is a point that Neera made when she was saying that everybody should go vote for Joe Manchin.
Wow, I didn't even know
an important
this.
point here. Manchin is a solid vote against ACA repeal. And so I would say, about him not voting to confirm Neera, that at least he's a solid vote against ACA repeal.
You're right. That's
Yeah.
totally true. So wait, Neera kind of endorsed him.
Oh, well, I mean, to be honest with you, let's have a look here. Let's also focus on great candidates running for Senate and help them. Beto O'Rourke, Rosen for Nevada. Right down at the bottom, Senator Joe Manchin.
And look above that, Heidi, who we were
Heidi
just talking
Heitkamp.
about.
Yeah, Heidi Heitkamp's on
wow.
there too,
Oh,
but-
Claire McCaskill's great.
I mean,
we love her.
This was when, we should remember part of the delicious and hilarious irony of this is that Neera Tanden is one of the people that was pushing Joe Manchin as acceptable. When all the people further left than her were saying
Attila
that
the Hun, yeah.
we're saying fuck Joe Manchin, he's he's really a Republican and blah blah blah. We shouldn't be doing all this support for him. She was out there saying we need to vote for Joe Manchin, vote blue no matter who. And so in the end, I guess I would say go Manchin. I have to agree with Neera here. That's a solid vote against ACA repeal, and glad to have him in office.
Glad to have him in office. Yeah, glad to have him as a friend of the progressives. Yeah,
I'll take fair weather friends. I don't give a shit. I just want Neera Tanden to have a bad week.
Yeah. Well, I want her to have more than a bad week. But here's the thing. Ready? Now, this is not that important. Her mean tweets, and certainly her mean tweets to Republicans, I couldn't care less about. But here's the thing. I'm about to show you some of Neera's friends' tweets. Now, why is this relevant? Of course you're not. It's guilt by association. No way. No. I don't hold people responsible for that. But here's why I am. Because Neera has spent a lot of her time and energy and power calling every single person who likes Bernie, claims to like Bernie, maybe has tweeted something pro-Bernie ever. Whenever they say something that's toxic online, that is further evidence of the Bernie bro, right? The abusive, toxic, heinous, violent, noxious, obnoxious at its kind of least, in its mildest form, Bernie bro. And she always asks people to repudiate it. She asked Bernie to repudiate it. She asked Mike Casca to repudiate something that, ironically enough, was tweeted by, this is back in 2016, this was tweeted by a parody account. A Republican parody account. And Emily Nussbaum tweeted it out, and it was someone calling her a psycho. And that was one of the 3 examples upon which the Bernie bro narrative was based. I'm not kidding. Wow. I wrote a piece about this that's paced, and it goes through the early evidence of the Bernie bro, and the pieces that they cited was the fake account, a woman who called her senator a piece of shit for stumping with Hillary, and a man who said don't vote with your vagina, which of all of those is the worst. But yeah. I guarantee you people have said more offensive things about me, for instance, Hillary people. But why am I bringing this up? Because she weaponizes identity politics. She weaponizes them with her own biography, as we were saying, right? She lived on Section 8 housing, and I would love for someone who had lived on Section 8 housing to be in office or be in the cabinet position, as long as they were then doing all they could do for people who live in Section 8 housing, not cutting programs like that and using their identity as a shield, which is why it is more dangerous, right? Everyone knows a Republican, a straight white dude cutting entitlements, it's obviously bad. If it's a woman of color who cites that she grew up on Section 8 housing, cutting it, you really think, you're like, oh, I guess it's not, she doesn't want to, she has to. Well, and
also it's this, people will argue back from that, well, who are you to criticize?
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? It's it is this weird shield to do bad policy, which is, I don't know, kind of almost a little bit, what Thomas Frank talks about in Listen Liberal with sort of the Democratic Party at large. It's like a new way of weaponizing identity to go even further with that.
Right. Yeah, it's really, so there's that. And now, if you'll just indulge me, because she has made such a narrative of the Bernie bro thing and constantly asks Bernie, remember she tried to get David Sirota in trouble for literally reporting on Beto, on where he got money from. Okay, that's it, remember? And she asked Bernie to repudiate it. So I went on this little thread, and I'm just going to share it. I hope this is okay, because again, this is Neera Tanden who asked Bernie to repudiate everything. And So I went on this thread saying Neera Tanden is a mean girl bully who signal boosts, hangs out with, and is friends with people who call young girls with Down syndrome sluts.
Oof.
Call Bernie Sanders a fake fucking Jew, and call Muslim American women terrorists. Okay, and then I do a little bit of a, then I go through how she punched someone in the chest. I go through how she weaponizes identity politics. Okay, how she wants to steal oil from Libya. And then I go, okay, her policies are awful, but she's also an absolute mean girl bully who weaponizes identity politics. She signal boosts and uplifts, uplifts some of the most toxic, bigoted voices while constantly demanding Sanders repudiate any and all online randos who claim to support him, even if Sanders has nothing to do with them. But who does Neera hang out with in real life and call friends and signal boost? Abusive trolls like Jeremy, with whom she's pictured and calls a treasure and part of her quote-unquote army. Okay? And look, I blocked out the other people, so you're welcome. So that's Jeremy.
Wow.
Okay? Look what he tweeted. Well, here she is calling him a friend and part of her army, which she uses the hashtag treasure. Here's some of his tweets. Fuck him to hell. Bernie would have won. Bernie would have choked on my dick.
Cool.
I just want to say something that's been bubbling up inside me and holding me back. It's so sad. I don't want this guy held back. I fucking hate Bernie Sanders with every fiber of my being, and I will not be happy until he has suffered greatly for what he unleashed.
Bordering on illegal to say about a senator,
Oh, yeah, it gets better. Hold on. Yeah. Ready? This is even better. More Jeremy. I will vote for the primary candidate that leaps across the debate stage, bites off Bernie's wagging finger, lifts it up like a trophy, and then throws it to the audience like a wedding bouquet.
Cool.
I like how poetic it is at the end. Bonus points if they pull out that awful tuft of hair, too. And then, this is great. He wrote this about Linda Sarsour. Oh, look, it's Linda Sarsour pretending she wouldn't be down to plan something like what happened today. And the thing that happened today, the day that he tweeted this, was the synagogue, Tree of Life synagogue shooting, where Jews were shot and killed. Do you remember that? God. So Linda Sarsour tweets out in solidarity and condolences, whomever did this is a monster. Our places of worship should be sanctuaries. We should all be free and safe to practice our faith in this country without fear of being targeted. And he decides to call her basically a terrorist sympathizer.
Jesus.
I'll go through the rest of this quickly, but here's a guy. You remember Mr. Weeks? Bernie Sanders is a fake fucking Jew. Then Neera Tanden wished him happy birthday, called him my friend. Do you know he has a picture taken with Hillary Clinton and she wrote him a note? Look at this, okay? This is him and her, right?
Oh my God.
Look at what she wrote him.
Weeks. Wow.
On another note, I want to thank you for your very vocal and enthusiastic support of me and my career in public service on social media. I appreciate your commitment to our shared values and vision. Together, let's keep fighting for the better, stronger, and fairer future we want for our country. Onward, with warm regards, I am sincerely yours, Hillary Clinton. Which, let's just imagine, I don't know if she had ever seen any of his stuff. She must have seen some of his stuff. Maybe she didn't see the fake fucking Jew, but just for a second, imagine if Bernie Sanders had posed for a photo and then written a note to someone who said comparable things about Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Here's some more stuff. Bernie Sanders can suck my dick, but he's not like this.
I mean, I do think it's funny to imagine Hillary reading that, for God's sake.
Maybe she gave him feedback.
Yes, and didn't he rent a truck and go around New York with a Fuck Bernie truck or something?
And here he is
that?
in this T-shirt. I don't have that. But this is a really weird one. He compares Medicare for all to some kind of weird sexual behavior. He goes, and if I can add, normally Medicare for all guy is the type who says, can you suck it to get hard? No. What lube do you use? Not spit. What's my name? Not daddy. Damn, you're tight. Wrong. Whole fool. I mean, this is the Medicare for all guy. All talk and don't know how to work it. If Hillary had seen this, she would have told him it was you. He had misspelled your.
I quite liked your tweet where you said Medicare for all is like the guy who says, can you suck it to get it hard?
I would just offer that you misspelled your.
Wrong your, Mr. Weeks.
But besides that, absolutely terrific.
Thank you for supporting my candidacy on social media.
Can you believe that? And then this guy, I won't go through everything, but this guy, Eclectic Brother, when Neera tweeted, I'm thankful for the resistance. He tweeted, I'm thankful for feisty, determined women who run think tanks that help Democrats pass progressive legislation.
Yes.
And she says to him, I'm definitely thankful for your cold fury and all you've done for the resistance. And that's weird. It's like a little romantic maybe. Then he tells her his mother was 5'2". I'm pretty sure that's where my adoration for feisty little women comes from.
Oh, okay.
Then she sends a smiley face with, pink cheeks. And then, on the other hand, he sends stuff like this to people. Suck my dick, you square-headed fuck. My point was valid and you're just some sniveling bitch. Scram. Also, mission accomplished. Now go fuck yourself with Krusty the Clown Senator from Vermont's dick. Suck my dick and choke on my nuts, Bernie bro. It's so funny. Suck my dick and choke on my nuts, Bernie bro. You toxic, sexist Bernie bro. And then he said this to me. I mean, I should recuse myself, but go fuck yourself with Cenk Uygur's dick, Katie, and take your man baby troll swarm with you. You and Bernie ain't never been shit. Wow. And then again, yes, Katie Halper, go fuck yourself with Cenk Uygur's dick. I never stuttered then or now. Leave Bernie's crack alone, geez. Anyway, there's a lot more where this came from. And again, it doesn't matter. It just matters because you should always look, because if you scratch someone who really uses the Bernie bro myth, you may get a person who does not care about online toxic behavior and who hangs out with those people and calls them treasures.
I'll be honest with you, Katie, that I do think it matters, and here's why. Because I like to weaponize things in bad faith against people who I don't like and don't want to see succeed. You know,
okay,
so a lot of times that happens. You know, with Bernie people. I think hypocrisy doesn't exist in America anymore. It's not something that people give a shit about, and so for me, I think it matters because I want Neera to not get a job and to never get to use the wall paper that she planned out to use in the White House back in 2015. Right. So my point is that I want it to matter because I strongly dislike her as a human being, and I never want her to have anything that would make her happy.
Okay, that's fine. But people are like, Twitter isn't real life. I'm like, I know that. So Jack has his reasons, and my reasons are because I actually think it's very dangerous to use the Bernie bro narrative to try to smear the most progressive, anti-racist, anti-sexist, feminist person who was in the race in 2016 or 2020. And this is just a window into how full of shit she is. So anyway,
for sure.
I feel terrible. I'm cursing so much. I mean, we're bringing on 3 esteemed guests who I feel like
and here you
they
are
have
talking
nothing.
About Cenk Uygur's dick.
It's actually Cenk.
Cenk?
It's pronounced
okay.
Cenk. It's Turkish. It's Turkish, yeah. But that's what they're offended by. Not that, Jack. They're offended by your mispronunciation. That's pretty messed up, and you need to atone for that. But
I'm going to take some time to better myself, and I'll think about this a lot.
Hold the space for Cenk. But we are bringing in these 3 illustrious guests, and again, they have nothing to do with what you just heard. They do not co-sign that, and they are none other than historian and professor of law and jurisprudence at Yale University, Samuel Moyn. Are we bringing them in one at a time? Or yes. Hi, Sam. How are you?
Hey, great to be here. Good to see you. Interesting stuff you guys are chatting about. Thank you.
Pretty important, impactful stuff, huh?
As a jurist, you look at the text, right? You have to look at text and do textual analysis.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, Twitter is worthy of that on most occasions. Yeah.
And we also have from Yale University, Jason Stanley, the Jacob Borowski Professor of Philosophy, and he is the author of. How
Fascism Works?
Yes, How Fascism Works. Sorry, there's so many different books. I was choosing which one. How Fascism Works. Welcome, Jason.
Great to be here.
Thanks for coming on. And Omar Wasow, who is an assistant professor in Princeton's Department of Politics. And his research focuses on race, politics, and statistical methods. And we're going to get into some of the really interesting research that he did. He also started Black Planet, right?
Yeah, it's before becoming an academic was a social media entrepreneur running online community pre-Facebook, pre-MySpace, like in the 90s.
Yeah, it was a big deal. I remember that. And we had on the last time you were on this show, we had you on with Malika Jabali, and she talked about what a big part of her life that was. But thank you all so much for coming. This is a really esteemed group. This is Jack Allison.
Hi. I'm not part of the esteemed group, just so everybody knows.
Yeah. No, he's a born again survivor of the late night television.
That's right.
He worked for Jimmy Kimmel.
I was esteemed once, but I am esteemed no longer.
Esteemed no more, yeah. So the last time that I had you, Jason, and you, Sam, on was shortly after January 6th. And we were having a debate about fascism and whether we're living in a fascist time, whether it's fascist adjacent, whether we're seeing fascism, whether this discourse and classification matters. And you, Omar, is someone who writes a lot about political science, and also in your statistical analysis, you do classify things a lot. I thought it would be interesting to talk about that question, and also just how we kind of describe what happened on January 6th, how we frame it, and how that should shape what we do about it. So maybe Sam or Jason, one of you could start, and maybe you could, if there's anything that has changed or anything you want to bring into the conversation that we didn't get to last time, or that we didn't even know about because it was shortly thereafter. We didn't know about how much involvement there was by law enforcement, anything that you've maybe been thinking about, writing about.
Do you want to start?
Sure. Well, I don't follow it as closely as Jason, so I'll say a few things and just kind of set myself up to be corrected. We're coming up on 20 years since September 11th, when a really shocking event happened that was tragic, and it led some with pre-existing agendas to act, and others to get caught up in a pretty long-standing paranoia. And actually, one of the results of that overreaction was Donald Trump. My take is that after the November election, even though he increased his gains, Trump set out to see whether he could successfully engage in what Latin Americans call a self-coup. And he explored what the possibilities were for extending his time in office. The truth is that January 6th was, marked a long process of utter failure of those attempts. And not least when, Mitch McConnell and Mike Pence, were against Trump, part of the resistance. Now, I think like September 11th, no one should minimize or trivialize January 6th. But, of the 300 or so rounded up, that's the number who seem to have penetrated the actual building. They've charged about 30 with conspiracy. We have to be, I think, very careful in trying to figure out what we're dealing with and making sure to rank our problems correctly. If we're concerned about the white supremacy that the Trump era made so vivid to so many people, we have to acknowledge that these are structures of long standing that the Democrats and the Republicans built. Donald Trump was a symptom more than the cause of that disease. And somehow I'm really worried that we're scapegoating him and those who were involved in January 6th, a minuscule number of people, instead of focusing on the deep problems of the country. And I think that's the discussion we need to force the Democrats and the Republicans to have.
So I agree with everything Sam just said. And just I think that Sam is not focusing as much on the Republican Party going forward. Sam and I probably differ to the degree to which we think the Republican Party is looking at the post-election events and saying, what are the weak spots and what failed here? We had two Republicans in Wayne County, one of whom certified and one of whom didn't. Next time, let's make sure neither certifies. So there's that. There's the Georgia bills that are going through, the sort of bringing back of the Jim Crow era restrictions, something like, not as bad, severe, but in the direction of radical voter suppression. This is, there's a very short time here to combat this. I agree with Sam that it's exactly what's happening, is the scapegoating of the people on January 6th to avoid paying attention to multifactorial causes here. As far as January 6th among white supremacists, is very among the far right all across the world, not just here, but in Germany, is a symbolic moment. And so that concerns me. But I think we can't, when we're talking about that whole post-election time, we have to look. I don't think we have a clear sense. I don't think we're in a position to adjudicate the weak versus strong, the claim about how close Trump got. Mm-hmm. The Republican Party, I think, is certainly seeing opportunities here. And we have to make sure that doesn't happen. But if the Democrats repeat the failures of the failures of the Obama era, essentially, if then they won't need much voter gerrymandering and voter suppression because there will be more elite failure. So I don't see this as a kind of restoration of the status quo. I see it as like 15 months to address the structural problems that Sam talked about, to reduce the number of people who would fall for this, what Sam rightly calls a symptom, something like Donald Trump.
Omar, do you
want? I would just add, I wrote a piece for the Washington Post trying to situate January 6th in a kind of longer contest between two coalitions in American history, right? There was one of the most common reactions was, this is un-American, this is not us. And I was trying to push back and say, well, if you look at the long arc of American history with a framework advanced in particular by two scholars, Smith and King, where they think about two traditions. One is a kind of white supremacist tradition, and the other is a kind of radical egalitarian tradition. And that those two traditions also have two governing coalitions, which have sort of swapped power over the last several hundred years in American history, right? So you have a colonial period and a kind of slaveocracy that then loses to Reconstruction, and the kind of egalitarian coalition captures power briefly, and then again the white supremacist coalition in the post-Reconstruction period captures power through the Civil Rights era, where we have a kind of push back towards an egalitarian coalition. And seen in that light, the kind of violence we witnessed on January 6th is part and parcel of this contest over, are we going to have a monoethnic or a multi-ethnic democracy? And so while the Capitol, the siege on the Capitol was certainly remarkable, it's also consistent with a long history of racial authoritarianism, like lynch mobs, like the kind of sustained violence we've seen directed at maintaining, basically a hierarchical democracy, an ethnic democracy over the last several hundred years.
So less of a departure than people would like to perhaps think it was.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's both important to sort of see it as part of the long arc, and as both Jason and Sam said, to see as part of a kind of an escalation, right? It's not simply just. Let me put it more precisely. Like, there's a period following the Voting Rights Act and over much of the last 50 years where it seems like we've kind of converged to both left and right agreeing that something like voting rights is a mainstream thing that the Republican Party supports. It's not, you don't have to go back very far to get nearly 100% support in the Senate for the re-certification of the Voting Rights Act. And now that's just, that is no longer a consensus. And so I think it's important to see that there was a brief period where it seemed like so both parties were committed to egalitarian principles and in some ways core democratic principles, and we're seeing that clearly come asunder. And so I wouldn't want January 6th to be seen as so consistent with our past that we miss the degree to which we lose sight of the trend away from what was a kind of egalitarian trend in the post-civil rights era for decades.
I love Omar's explanation and Washington Post piece, and everyone should read it. I'd love to hear how we take that dichotomy between kind of the white supremacists and the kind of democratic egalitarians and throw class in, because when you do that, we immediately have some difficulties. I think the 2020 election was close enough to allow Trumpian hijinks. And that's because you have this emerging, I think, scary reality of two cross-class parties going head to head. And 2020, in a sense, made it worse, precisely because as more wealthy suburban types vote for Biden and put him over the top as part of the resistance, scared of fascism, you see more and more lower class Black and brown people voting for Trump. Again, after like 4 years of the worst delegitimation of any political figure I've ever witnessed. So
what are the facts
I'm
here?
having trouble to...
Wait, hold on 1 second. Can we just let Sam just finish the sentence?
Well, no, I just have trouble fitting that story into the story where on one side we have white supremacy and on the other side democratic equality, because it sort of doesn't match the class story in all that well.
So just a question, because you've said this a couple times in our discussion, Sam. It sounds like you're making the claim that rich people voted for Biden and poor Blacks voted for Trump.
No. We're talking about change in voting patterns. Of course, it's true that the Democrats retain a lot of racially stigmatized members of the underclass, for sure, and that's part of their historic coalition. But it's leaching away. It's not big yet. But what is amazing is that after being condemned by people like us rightly for 4 years as a white supremacist, Trump gained.
What are we jumping to two data points? Right. So one is, I think the evidence of racial depolarization, and in particular of like the Latino swing and Black swing, has been largely overstated. So let me just kind of add a little bit of detail there, right? So certainly in Florida, there's a Cuban swing and some of the other groups in Florida, but in Texas, the evidence seems to suggest right now that a lot of what we saw as swings towards Trump in heavily Latino communities is driven more by the fact that those are very small counties where a little bit of movement looks like a big percentage change, but it's actually not many people. In the Black community, you're talking about something like 1 in 5 African-American men. And so it's not a huge number.
That's kind of shocking though.
No, I mean, men are motivated by multiple things, including sexism. And
of course. I'm not suggesting it's a Black voting monolith, obviously, but it is. Yeah. What was it last time?
African American women vote about 9 in 10 for the Democratic Party. In general, African Americans vote about 90% for the Democratic Party. So you've got about 80% of African American men voting for the Democratic Party. So I want to be cautious about the degree to which we're saying there's as much depolarization as there's been, but I think it's important to keep in mind that there was some shift, and some of that was also among Asian Americans, and so there's it's not that there's nothing going on, but I don't think there's as much as maybe got press in the immediate wake of the election. And then the second thing is I think it is useful to engage with this question of class. Heather McGhee has this new book out, which has been getting a lot of attention, where part of the kind of core theme of it, right, is that basically white America in the wake of the post-civil rights era, walked away from all sorts of support for public goods, whether it was schools or in the kind of the animating metaphor of her book, public pools, where rather than share a public pool, it got closed down to both Blacks and whites, right? And whites suffer from that too. And so part of her narrative or her pitch is there are ways to appeal to whites by saying, racism costs you something. And you can look at something like this $1.9 trillion stimulus as an effort to build a broad coalition that speaks across lines of race and class, and is sort of saying, hey, there's something in this coalition for you. And so I think there are ways to, and you can look at, Raphael Warnock in Georgia and I'm forgetting
Ossoff, yeah.
Like they ran aggressively on, we are going to support this public good in this $2,000 payment, right? And so I think it's true that you both need to kind of see, race as this like profound organizing principle in American history, and also think about how do we build coalitions across lines of race, and that might mean speaking to people's material interests.
So I agree with Omar, but I also think, I don't know what this was Sam was saying, but I think it's something we need to address. Disaggregating race and class in the United States seems to me complicated. The McGee narrative, the Jonathan Metzl's dying of whiteness, These are and this is what the race class academy, the race class narrative is supposed to address. But you have this kind of racialization of public. We see it with public schools, public health. We see it with Brittany Cooper has this great piece from 2015 called we don't call them segregationists never went away. We just call them small government conservatives, where she's addressing this. And we see, so the point, we have this structure that says the public stuff doesn't go to you, it says to poor whites. Another thing I think that we need to just reiterate, just to make sure that we prevent this analysis of, Black Americans flocking to Trump, because it is a quite, it seems to me a somewhat farcical analysis, is that the patriarchy, just to repeat what Omar said, these are multifactorial movements. That's why I think of this as fascism and not simply as white supremacy. Though white supremacy, as Ida B. Wells emphasizes in Southern Horrors, is also patriarchal by its nature, because it says we're going to protect your women. But this structure is patriarchal, is harshly patriarchal. And we see this internationally right now. We see Brazil, we see many Black supporters of Bolsonaro. It's a very male kind of politics. India, you see Muslim supporters of BJP, also in these small numbers. And another thing we need to talk about is Christian nationalism. When you're talking, I mean, when you look at, I've done a bunch of interviews. I mean, the Proud Boys are kind of a little bit of a distraction in that I think that the large scale, far right, informal militia structures in many states regard the Proud Boys as a kind of TV phenomenon to some extent. They're sort of an upper class, a fancy organized thing. But I think that, there are definitely Black members of the Proud Boys, but find a Muslim member of the Proud Boys.
Yeah, but it's fun. Why are there Muslim supporters of Modi? Because of non-Hindu.
Because these are multifactorial things.
Well, but the consistent thread is that it's ethno-nationalism. It's a fusing of ethnic identity and who should who should hold power in the state. Right. Yeah. And so there are a bunch of countries that have, the contest. I mean, this is to the point earlier where I think white supremacy, the limits of the term white supremacy speak to, there are a couple of things, right? One is, if you take it literally, if you're not somebody who's a student of history, you miss the degree to which it's patriarchal, you miss the degree to which it's anti-Semitic, you miss the degree to which it historically was anti-Catholic, it was nativist. And so if it's too emphasizing, if we just see white-black as the dynamic, we miss all of these other components. And so in that way, I think a term like ethno-nationalism is useful because it speaks to the ways in which we see these patterns cross-nationally and isn't as specific to a kind of black-white race dynamic in the U.S.
But I'm just curious because, Jason, just to interject for a second, you said find a Muslim Proud Boy, and then it made me think of how you just mentioned that there were Muslim supporters of Modi. So my question was more about that particular phenomenon, which we can have another show on. But given that Modi's ethno-nationalism is so built in like Hindu nationalism, I'm just surprised. That's all I was saying. But we can.
Right. There are always going to be supporters from the minority group of the majority ethno-nationalist movements. It's just a fact. So.
Which is the flip side of that sometimes is that when you talk about, I know this is verboten, but in some places. Is the economic anxiety. Sometimes if you make the argument, you don't dismiss racism and that it's obviously part and parcel, and you can't have a discussion about Trump and Trumpism without talking about race. But sometimes if you bring up that there are economic or structural factors in addition to racism, people will say, well, if that's true, then why aren't Black people supporting Trump? Why don't a majority of Black people support Trump? And whenever people say, I'm like, well, because that's not how it works. Like, it is multifaceted, as you guys are saying. Obviously, like racism, it just doesn't work that way. I don't know if I'm expressing it, but like the way that people interact with these isms is going to be different, obviously.
So I think there are two elements to the critique of economic anxiety. One is it's not actually held up especially well as a predictor of voting behavior. So even when we account for a bunch of factors, for example, in 2016, white working class supported Hillary at a higher rate than they supported Trump. What we see as a real core cleavage is education, right? So I think what you've got is a non-trivial number of people who might earn 60, 70, 80K a year as, somebody who's like an electrician and who is not college educated. And that seems to be increasingly how the parties are sorting, in addition to things like, anti-Black affect and sexism. And so that's one part, is that it turns out it's not to say that there might not be other measures of economic anxiety, like declaring bankruptcy or other things that we're not picking up in, like income. But in the statistical analyses, it hasn't held up especially well. And then I think the other aspect of it that's important is that it's clear we need to think about the role that class is playing. I mean, I certainly am not arguing against that, but I think we're in some ways it's being constructed in a way that misses what's going on. It's a sense of, the way the evidence suggests that it's really about status loss. People have a sense of, I am, in some ways entitled to a certain kind of rank and in some ways income in America, and that's threatened. And that's not exactly economic anxiety. It's mixed in, but it's much more about a sense of lost status than it is about wealth.
Du Bois's The Psychological Wages of Whiteness continues to be an analysis that reverberates.
It's terrifically complicated to get into this, and I think we're only at the beginning even of trying to understand the 2020 election. There was this amazing moment in the 2016 election during one of the debates where Donald Trump assumed that that a Black man in the audience who's asking him a question lived in the inner city just on the basis of his race, and went on to say, "What have the Democrats done for you people?" Hoping to curry favor with them, and an extraordinary just failure of self-awareness on Trump's part, and the expectation that he would get votes as a result, literally insane. And yet, you could see the question as a fair one. African Americans have not changed their voting patterns all that much, because they could recognize Trump as a, dyed-in-the-wool racist. On the other hand, I think some of the 2020 analysis points to decline in turnout, which played a major role in 2016 as well. And so I agree with both of my colleagues that we're not seeing major shifts.
You mean all four of your colleagues?
All four, including Jack.
I'm no colleague of anyone.
But it's something to watch as both of the parties become more class diverse than they had been before.
I also think something interesting. Oh, Jason, did you want to?
Just a very quick point, because I gave my new book is on language and power that I'm writing now, and I gave a talk in Tübingen linguistics, and there was a German postdoc working on Trump's speeches. And she wanted to know why Trump always, whenever he's speaking to Black audiences, always uses the racist talk. He always uses inner city. He always, when he's announcing his historically Black colleges and universities initiative, he's always doing exactly what Sam just pointed out. And she wanted to know why that was. That was like in 2019.
I feel like I have to jump in and mention that Joe Biden does a lot of that too. And that Joe Biden, also historically, fumbles his words and says the wrong things about people of color. And the quote you said earlier about what happened to the segregationists, they became, right-wing conservatives. They also literally became the current president of the United States, who was a segregationist, who worked, with busing and allied with segregationists, at the time. And so I have to push back on this idea that this is a solid black and white issue of because we currently have elected a segregationist to the presidency as a Democrat.
Right, because the thought was that by many Black politicians in the Democratic Party, I suspect that Americans will only vote for someone with a racist history or past, or someone with that.
So then I guess I'm saying, so I guess I'm maybe this is just that we live in a white supremacist nation and it's impossible. I guess I would push back at the idea that even voting for a Democrat, represents not voting for white supremacy.
So let me push back. Let me both agree with one part of your point and push back hard on another part. So on the first part, you're absolutely right that like both parties have sordid history, whether it's thinking about mass incarceration or tough on crime laws or any as you mentioned issues like busing. Right, the history is fraught, and for someone like Biden, right, he's been on both sides of a lot of these issues, advocating for major crime legislation. I think it's important to distinguish, though, between the modal Democrat 30 years ago and where we are now, and so the idea that he is a segregationist now is actually overstating the case. I think he is elected by a broad coalition, broad multi-ethnic coalition, and is making very clear in everything he can, appointments and kind of policy priorities that he's going to try and build, kind of speak to the needs of that multi-ethnic coalition. So I think that's not segregationist politics now, but I think you're right that it is absolutely messy over the last 50 years. And that kind of simplification of two coalitions is a simplification, and that we need to pay attention to the ways in which there are policies that are being advanced by those on the left that are actually quite harmful too. And those are often done when the policy priorities are kind of driven historically by things like fear of this kind of deep terror about the Black presence in America. I think you're right to force us to complicate it, but I don't think it's fair to say that Biden is a segregationist.
Yeah, I think just to agree and amplify, the 90s, what happened in the 90s when violent crime starts dropping rapidly in the early 90s, and then and mass incarceration shoots up way after violent crime has been dropping, is that the result of both parties doing this racial vilification and putting crime at the center of their policies. And when both parties do this, then you see an acceleration of the white supremacist agenda. And I think I think that's very.
What does modern segregationist? What does being a modern segregationist look like?
Voter suppression. I think you can define the coalitions around who wants to enfranchise and who wants to disenfranchise.
I would also argue that immigration policy has to do with it, and deportations has a lot to do with it. Yeah. And if you do compare, the deportations under Obama to the deportations under Trump, there were, Obama deported as many people, more than every prior president. And so I guess I'm still pushing back on what does a non-segregationist America look like.
Well, I think that maybe there are also ways that. Well, no, you want to jump in? I guess I would just say that there are also other ways of updating that term. Maybe like we saw, for instance, that Biden's, his student debt relief. We talked about this the other day on a panel with Brianna Joy Gray and Ed Angueso, Trevor Bouillot and Leslie Lee and Justin Jackson, and we were talking about how the people who suffer the most from that are Black women. So all these decisions that he's making that disproportionately harm the groups that he claims to care about, but of course it's not with the language that Trump uses. And I also want to say that discourse is not irrelevant. I mean, discourse does have actual material, like concrete outcomes. But I also do think that if we only look at the discourse, then yeah, it's like Trump bad, Biden good, except not even with the discourse of Biden. But yeah.
I think
the policies
when we focus I completely agree that Biden should completely not be Obama 2.0 and focus on some massive economic, not undersell.
1,400.
Yeah.
Those are all errors, and we need to critique that. But neither do I want to focus on economic rights alone. That's something you see everywhere over the world and in the history of the United States. This idea that if you give economic prosperity, economic prosperity without voting rights to a group, you're really doing right by them.
But does anyone think that? I've never heard that.
The Republican Party is right now engaged in massive voter suppression.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, of course. Okay, yeah, of course. Right.
It's an emergency. It's an emergency. As is, decreasing the base for white supremacy by having a massive economic subsidy to black and white and brown populations all across the United States, because that is the best way to tamp down the support for fascist movement.
Can I ask a question of the three of you? No, the four of you. I'm not just saying that to make fun of you, Jack, because you have, no, I'm serious. You have really good, on this though, I think maybe this is in your guys' lanes, especially yours, Jason, but how does the economic anxiety, okay, Nazi Germany, obviously it's always this cliche to go there, right? But how, the role of, when people mock the idea of economic anxiety, and I think as you spoke to, Omar, it's in this, we see the evidence is more about a sense of loss as opposed to actual wealth or actual income. But, no one laughs at the idea that there was an economic element to Nazification, right? To like the rise of Hitler. And it seems like, and I'm not doing that Godwin's law thing, or I'm trying not to do that, but it seems like it's just obvious that those things would exacerbate things that are there. Like I'm not denying racism and obviously or anti-Semitism, but it seems like that idea is laughed at, when I thought like the consensus was that economic things will exacerbate things, will make people more prone to looking to demagoguery and extremism.
I mean, Sam is the historian of here, and he should address this. But yes, that's why I think, that's why sometimes people say FDR stopped fascism by a massive public works program. And, we're seeing a rise in anti-Semitic conspiracy theories as I look in my inbox today. And we're this kind of structure when the elites have failed, as they have, repeatedly for decades. You're going to get racial resentment. You're going to get these factors. You're going to get blame. You're going to get demagogues blaming the other. And then we have the point that the attacks on the labor movements, the Du Bois point, Black Reconstruction, have always taken the form of using racism to
divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer. And attacking labor movements. And this is what we've seen in the Midwest. We're not looking enough at the Midwest. We're not looking enough at what Scott Walker did. We're not looking enough at what happened in Michigan, where billionaire Christian nationalists, the DeVoses and others, funded these sort of destruction of labor unions, right to work laws that swung those states to the right. And so we do know, that is a generalization. The causal mechanisms are complex. But when the labor movement is weakened, and I know there's police unions and prison guard unions and stuff, but when the labor movement is weakened, it exacerbates white resentment. And this is a point, very obviously it's central into the analysis in Black Reconstruction, but it's also just seems correct about Wisconsin and Michigan. If you look at, the militia
speaking too much
movements
truth
in Michigan, like the January 6th was January 6th was preceded by the raid on Michigan's legislature that nobody seemed to pay attention to.
Yeah, Gretchen Whitmer, who I did not know was Jewish until then.
She is.
She's Jewish, yeah. And you know who converted, by the way? You know who's a Jewish convert? I don't want him in. Not that I'm religious, but I want to kick him out. Steve Schmidt.
Oh, wow.
Of the Lincoln Project. And I only found that out because his resignation from the board of the Lincoln Project referred to his soul searching.
That makes sense about Gretchen Whitmer, the conspiracy theories surrounding.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah, I love your question, Katie. No one could deny that German racism was supercharged by things like, a failed war and the enormous shock of, the inflation that occurred in the 1920s and then the Great Depression.
The stagflation, I remember that term.
No one would deny any of that, but at the same time, we can't, leave out the racism. I'd actually argue that, American racism of the kind that, African Americans, continue to suffer from it has never been addressed in the way that anti-Semitism was in German history until these terrible events happened that led to the slaughter of so many people. So we're dealing with something structural. It's not short term. I agree with Omar totally that the Democrats have changed a lot. On the other hand, going back to the 50s and 60s, it was credible to believe in things like the integration of the public schools. And we're so far away with de facto segregation back to 1967 levels from even the Democrats making that a core of their program. I think this meliorist perspective could miss some things about just how entrenched over the past 40 years American racism has gotten, quite independently of Donald Trump and totally independently of bands of white nationalists, however many people are in them.
Could you define meliorist perspective for people watching and listening?
Just the idea that, and Omar is completely right about this, and I'm not challenging him, that on some perspectives, the amount of open racism that was tolerated, indeed required, even among Democrats not that long ago, is completely staggering. And Democrats today are very different. So that's the point that cuts against, Jack's, I think, really important reminder that Biden was involved in some unholy stuff all along. But the fact that there has been so much change, which sets up, our current outrage, doesn't mean that, there aren't these entrenched structures with which the Democrats have been complicit all these years.
One other area that I think I would agree that I think speaks to complicating the story, as Jack rightly encouraged us to do, is if we think about something like school segregation, it's heavily driven by housing segregation. And housing segregation in this country is heavily driven by zoning policies that restrict the ability of poor people, but particularly poor people of color, to move to where there's economic opportunity. And the coalition of people who are, stalwart backers of that kind of exclusionary zoning it's people who are homeowners, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, right? And so I think there's a set of policies around things like zoning, where it doesn't cut cleanly across. The racial dynamics are very clear, but the party dynamics are not. And that pains me, because I'm here in California, and it's like, there's a kind of I lack language for it. It's a kind of liberal conservatism where whether it's the Sierra Club advocating for policies that increase the degree to which people have to commute long distances and produce more greenhouse gases, or people who have love my Muslim neighbors, but only if they live on a 1.25 acre lot that costs $1 million. Those are policies where there's a kind of sort of a principled commitment to certain sorts of ideas, equality under the law, but actually deep opposition to other kinds of policies that might actually create more economic mobility.
Or the NAACP basically writing an endorsement of Prop 22. An NAACP person writing I don't know if you saw that.
That was in the California,
Yeah. So, big donation from, Uber,
So I think, I completely agree with housing, schools, and I would put number one for me, given what I've been working on and what brought me into these topics, mass incarceration. We still have the highest rate of mass incarceration in the world. So I completely agree with that. However, I think there's a false dichotomy, and here I think Sam and I differ somewhat, but maybe we can come to some rapprochement here. We can walk and chew gum. He refers to you, Sam. You referred to small bands of white supremacists. I remember when the Babri Masjid Mosque was a small band of Hindu nationalists in 1992. It was inconceivable to everyone that BJP would take over India. Inconceivable. When Modi was running Gujarat and he was banned, it was inconceivable. And so, to me, when I look at American history, when I see, for instance, what happened with Kentucky, the Kentucky State Police, that didn't get much play. When the commander of internal affairs was running training PowerPoints with Hitler, positive Hitler references. Law enforcement in the United States is shot through with this. I don't know what the solution is. It's not to do 9/11. It's not to repeat the errors of the Patriot Act and that kind of thing. But this thing, if you look internationally, it would be a mistake to say, oh, small bands of white supremacists, they're irrelevant. We can do both. We absolutely need to deal with the radical racial structural racism that affects the city that Sam and I live in, which is highly racialized, our neighborhood versus other people's versus black.
New Haven, for people that know.
New Haven, and these are horrific things. But they're all intermingled, because demagogues come when our colleague Elizabeth Hinton is coming out with a book arguing that what we've seen since the 1960s are thousands of revolutions against militarized police. All of these cities require militarized police to protect the neighborhood that Sam and I live in from other neighborhoods. And so that leads to essentially revolutions. And then those revolutions, a demagogue represents as threats to whiteness. And so there's a kind of connectedness here. And I'm concerned that we do have a problem of possible return figures that central to the Republican Party being as radical as BJP. And certainly Bolsonaro, you looked at the connection between Bolsonaro and the Trump administration, the Republicans. This is an international thing, and it's not a small band of ethno-nationalists.
Bolsonaro made Trump look like Gandhi.
Right, yeah. But the more we find out, the more there are lots of connections there. I mean, Eduardo Bolsonaro and obviously friends with Don Jr.
Well, okay, so I agree totally with Jason that there are these two risks that we should avoid incurring. One is complacency, and the other is paranoia. And the truth is, we found out a lot of things we thought were true that turned out to be not true. And the key is to stay calm and not empower those who are going to play on the paranoia, especially when they're not able to walk and chew gum as well as Jason, and are using the paranoia to engage in the kind of Trump washing that's been pervasive ever since Joe Biden took the oath of office. So, my view is I'm completely in agreement with Jason. Maybe some factual differences, but we agree that that structural racism of long standing can lead in some really scary directions. We don't know, how many people are taking us in those really scary directions. All we know is that Democrats and Republicans alike have gotten us to this point. And it's really not clear. I don't think anyone has the answer about what we do to give the democratic egalitarian promise more, not just of a hearing, but to make it more of a lived reality in this country.
And Sam, I know you have to jet soon, but can you talk about the ramifications of this, as you call it, paranoia in terms of surveillance, and also how this relates to your forthcoming book?
Sure. So, I mean, I won't get into detail, and the the 9/11 1/6 parallel should not be taken too far. There are some big differences, but in the work I tried to do,
lives, I guess, thousands and thousands of lives of difference, I guess I would say.
That's right. Well, so that's right. I mean, the number who died on January 6th is no comparison. Mm-hmm. And as of yet, we've not seen the extraordinary 2-decade-long war on terror
early for that,
made domestic. And that's because we still have a chance to stop it and get some healthier dynamics. But, Katie's right that what happened after 9/11 is not just the destruction of various countries, but the creation of a new kind of state and its capacity to surveil. And what I've written about in that regard is this new kind of war that's come online that's no longer exactly territorial. It goes wherever it needs to go. Its light footprint or no footprint relies on surveillance, sometimes kills, but more often doesn't need to do so. And it's eternal. And so I just think that, notwithstanding the big differences, if the responses begin to look similar after 1/6, I think we need to take extreme care that we don't continue to bring home some of the things that we invented for our fellow humans abroad in the last 20 years.
Could I say something agreeing with Sam quickly?
No, it's not. It doesn't bring the eyeballs.
I think the danger of following the 9/11, I would put a different spin on a shared sense of the danger here. I think the danger of focusing on this kind of terrorism frame for 9/11 for 1/6 is Josh Hawley's the terrorist. That's not what's going on. What you're doing, what you see constantly, and again, I'll turn to the fascism frame. It helps me. I think Omar, when he talked about ethno-nationalism, that plus a cult of the leader is sort of what I call fascism. The structure I think of as fascism. The danger is you always have the people actually responsible getting away with it by pointing to the people on the street and saying, we're not the fascists, those are the fascists. Actually, the problem is the Republican Party is trying to take us back to the Jim Crow era. That's the problem. The problem is not there is like a massive law enforcement problem, a massive militia. I think we don't know its scale, but like all sorts of government failures have led to many kind of informal militias and stuff like that. But the danger is if we start going after the people on the street, that will be a washing out of what is actually happening, which is a rollback of the kind of what Omar, a rollback of all the lessons we learned from the 90s, a rollback of all the lessons we learned, and a move back to an inegalitarian Republican Party that embraces Jim Crow laws and says, but we're not that because look, we imprisoned those 12 people.
I think there's one other dimension that's worth considering, which is just to kind of again sit with Jack's push of like how is now different from the past, or how are the Democrats not also complicit, is that if we think of the core problem, so I think in some ways, yes, it feels like with voter suppression, it's clearly an echo of a long history of Jim Crow policies, but it's also like the ways in which the sorting has now happened, right? In some ways, in the earlier era, there was a kind of a white majority that dominated politics and kind of agreed to share power. And it's not clear that it's actually a return to Jim Crow in the sense that it's not clear that what we're seeing as a kind of anti-democratic move on the right is actually an echo of that authoritarian past. I mean, it feels a little bit more like, Hungary or Poland or these places where we're seeing democratic erosion. And I don't even know that we quite have I mean, there are moments in American history that have that quality, but I'm not sure Jim Crow is the right analog, in part because it reflects a different kind of party structure, right? The Democrats and the Republicans might have been opposed to each other in the past, but there was a kind of a gentleman's agreement that this was it's a white Christian country, and now that there's not that kind of consensus, and there's a group pushing for a multi-ethnic, and as you said, a Christian nationalist push, it's like it has this different dynamic too, and I don't know how to make sense of that entirely if we just invoke the past.
Yeah, you're absolutely, Omar. I wanted to base things in U.S. history. You're absolutely right. In my own work, I draw on Hungary. I started working on fascism after running 2 summer schools in Hungary in 2009 and 2010, and
Lots
seeing
of
the
material.
Yeah, exactly. And people there were like, "Oh, so you're being ridiculous." But yeah, exactly. Hungary's obviously informing what's going on. Poland, those structures, people are learning massive gerrymandering. Civil use of the courts in civil way for civil fines, what's happening in Hungary. So yeah, it's not identical to the past by any means, and it's really mistaken to decontextualize the United States, this U.S. authoritarianism from what's happening internationally.
And that's just one other puzzle to me, which is if we see in a variety of evidence that the Republican Party is just skewing much more far right than the Democratic Party, it ought to be possible under the current rules for the Democratic Party to be more successful. And so, and we ought to see more mass mobilization as part of a pro-democracy movement. And so part of the puzzle for me is like, where are people in that pro-democratic coalition, kind of trying to do more? And that feels to me like a really important question, not just about criticizing the anti-democratic forces, but saying, hey, where is the the mass mobilization for democracy?
Right. So here's where I think this is why I find the fascism frame helpful, because the democracy itself is being attacked and delegitimized as sort of corrupt, and it didn't help that democracy was corrupt.
Yeah.
When you have so much, when you had the response to the financial crisis being what it was, it lended itself
under Obama,
under Geithner being put and Summers being put in charge of things. It lent itself to a perfect frame for saying, look, democracy's corrupt. It's bought by the special interests. And so you get actual anti-democratic sentiment. And then you get the kind of propaganda that we see of a strong leader who will take it to the corrupt democratic interests. You get the actual attack on democracy, which is why we cannot have Obama. We can't redo the democratic path.
I love Omar's point, and I really think it sensitizes us to the novelty and in a way the opacity of our moment. That I would say that there's strikingly little social mobilization, even though we've seen a moment in November 2020 of extraordinary, really unprecedented in the century electoral mobilization. Even taking into account what happened last summer, relative to the actual coming of fascism and the resistance to it. In America, it's pretty quiescent. The levels of street violence between pro and anti-democratic forces that we know about from the 1920s and early 30s are quite simply absent from our current time.
Because there's no left. There's nothing they have to do.
And so I think Omar's point, should be generalized as a puzzle to think about kind of the American, social mobilization as a whole, when we're allegedly on the brink of fascism and we're seeing almost like, very little.
Well, I think Black Lives Matter is a pro-democratic movement. That's
sure.
And that was the largest mass mobilization in. And if we listen to our fellow Americans, the law enforcement has been shot through with essentially fascist forces. And so I read Black Lives Matter as a pro-democracy movement.
But Black Lives Matter wasn't holding, rallies against Trump, saying that he won the election. I think that's frankly, I think that Black Lives Matter is pretty specifically about police work in the United States. It is not about, democracy so much. I mean, it's a very specific movement about, how we have a sort of murderous and white supremacist police force in this country.
I think it didn't disaggregate police work from other aspects of our society. And you did have the mobilization of, as the New York Times article showed, there was this group of organizers, labor, Black Lives Matter, working together to strategize about whether to continue the mobilizations. So there was that huge article a little while ago. So I think there was a coordinated left. I agree with Katie, though, that I remember a few years ago, Tim Snyder said to me, Antifa is a real problem. And I said, what do you mean? You think they're a problem because they're violent or whatever? He's like, No, there's not enough of them.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
There needs to be a massive, you need.
Tim Snyder will next debate between Omar and Tim Snyder about the role of that.
Well, right, because my work finds that violence actually often forces, it narrows your coalition. And you can, it can be effective in terms of drawing media attention, but it can also be ineffective in terms of taking people who are at the margins, potential allies, and driving them into the opposition. But then again,
the radical flank. But then the radical flank, right?
That's also why I feel like the sort of this puzzle of January 6th, which is. What we've seen, a broad criticism of it, and yet not obviously an effective mobilization to build the coalition that is the anti-insurrection coalition, and I think to maybe be too agreeable, I think. I would agree with Jason that BLM should be seen as a critical kind of pro-democracy movement, but it's not in the way that I think Jack and I were talking about it, which is like who is out there fighting 160 voter suppression bills? Who is out there putting pressure on donors who support candidates who say this was not a free and fair election? Who is out there really trying to make it hard for the Sinema and Manchin to oppose overturning the filibuster? I just don't see. I see lots of people saying support the new Voting Rights Act, support the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and none of the infrastructure that would be how do you overturn the filibuster? Who's going to break Manchin and Sinema's opposition? How are we going to build a coalition where you get to the ending the filibuster? And that kind of tactical, but nevertheless critically mass mobilization, I don't see, and so it feels a little bit like a kind of fantasy league politics.
Yeah.
Omar,
I know that. Sorry, one second. I know Sam has to leave, so want to give him the chance to leave without looking like he's disagreeing with us and leaving in a huff or something. But
lovely to be with you as always.
Yes,
Thanks. I learned a lot.
Leaving in a good mood and not in a huff. Goodbye.
Bye. Nice to meet you, Jack.
And we have I'm going to just play. I wanted to play for people. We have a second segment of the show where we're going to be talking about with Ali Abunimah about what's happening in Israel. And so you guys are welcome to stay for that for a little, although you've been here for a long time and I don't want to put you on the spot. So I will play. Let's just say our goodbyes. And then I want to thank you guys for coming. I'll play, in case anyone does want to stick around, I'm going to play, you guys will appreciate this, I think, a video of Biden talking about busing back when he was a senator. It's interesting. His rationale for opposing it is very interesting. But any final words from either of you? And definitely come back, because this is a great discussion.
It was great meeting you, Jack and Omar. I've wanted to meet you for a while.
Likewise.
Admire your work. I think there is. You're absolutely right. We need that coalition. I think I put an article from the New York Times about something like that coalition that has been formed. But that's what we need, and it's an honor to be in discussion with you.
Yeah, I also really grateful for your work. Just finished reading How Fascism Works. Encourage others to read it as well. And grateful, Katie and Jack, for your probing questions and pushing us to think hard about this moment of democratic erosion and the real serious threats we face.
Great.
Thank
you.
Thanks for talking. Good to talk to you.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
So now we are so excited to be bringing on Ali Abunimah. And I'll have to play that. Of course, I'll play that Biden clip. But really quickly, just gotta thank some people for becoming Patreons. Are you guys ready for this? Thank you so much. This is from
how exciting.
This is from the last show, which we did on Wednesday. John, Eric, Camille, Paul, Drew, Suzanne, Deborah, Heather, Adele, Sam. Am I reading this with more feeling than I did? Someone told me I was reading through it too quickly, so I'm trying to really feel it, really connect to the people.
This feels
It feels real, right?
This feels really real. Yeah.
Okay. Sam, Nicholas, Dad. Not my dad, because he doesn't know how to find a podcast.
Just someone whose name on Patreon.
Oh my God,
is
maybe
Dad.
it's Brooklyn Dad Defiant.
Oh wow, I hope
BDD.
so. Celebrity patron.
Byron, Kat, Shauna, and Samuel. Thank you guys so much. You helped make this show happen. And speaking of helping make the show happen, some super chats. Jason Stanley is the man. From David, I will show him that. A long story short, writes, Trump grifted the ethno-nationalist part of his base. Trump ran on historical low black unemployment and criminal justice reform. Richard Spencer was a big Biden supporter. John Coaster, brilliant conversation. Thank you. Question mark is their name. Patriarchy was not understood to be a gender arrangement, but a familial order. Slavery was part of the white family, hence why the black people are oppressed by patriarchy, and the black male can't be patriarch. Okay, interesting. Well, let's bring on our next guest. Really excited to have him on. He's been on the show before. Everyone should be following him on Twitter. Also following his the site that he founded. Ali Abunimah. Oh, I'm going to let you in now. Sorry. Ali, hello.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for joining.
It's nice to be here. Can your team of producers didn't do the frame check and everything beforehand?
Oh wow.
I think you sound
the frame
good.
is excellent. The frame
Yeah,
is
great
very,
framing.
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how's the sound, everyone? How's the sound?
Yeah.
Sound good?
Sounds
good to me.
Yeah,
Thanks.
your producers were hassling me all day on the phone. And
Wow.
I think I did like 3 or 4 pre-interviews
Wow.
Right.
before they finally decided to book me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was like I mean, not that I would try, but it was like trying to get on MSNBC.
I know. Except
they have
you'd
to
want
first
to.
make sure
Yeah.
you're not going to say anything bad about Joe Biden and stuff like that.
Yeah,
before
so-
you get to
Or
I mean-
Israel.
Yeah.
We had to do the Israel test. Yeah.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to grab just
sure.
a glass of water and I'll
Yeah,
be
of
right
course.
back.
Yeah. I can. Let me. Sorry, I just want to open up this tweet. Ali's been on the show. We had a great conversation with you last about what an ally Barry Weiss was and how committed she is to fighting against cancel culture. And we've seen her come out swinging once again when Nathan Robinson was fired by The Guardian. And I think she said something like, I doubt this is the full story, but if the most anti-Israel newspaper in the world fired him, yeah. I've been wanting to have you back on, and also wanted to have you back on to talk about the work that you do, and also just a response to this, what's happening with Israel and the COVID vaccine, for which they've been praised because they're vaccinating so many people. And when Jack gets back, I'm just going to play a clip from a recent.
here.
Oh, great! I was just going to play a clip from an SNL episode because I think that's a good way to kind of get this conversation started. I'm sure you've seen this, Ali. Okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's just play this, and then maybe you can give some context to it. 1 second, please. Oh, and I didn't introduce you. Sorry, Ali Abunimah. He's been described as the leading American proponent of a one-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He's a resident of Chicago. He contributes regularly to such publications as the Chicago Tribune, LA Times. He's also served as the vice president on the board of directors of the Arab American Action Network. He's a fellow at the Palestine Center. He's a co-founder of the electronic. Did I mess up?
No,
Oh.
just some of those. You must have grabbed that off somewhere, because some of those are a little like the Chicago Tribune will not let me write for them today.
He's no longer
Used
allowed to
to,
contribute
used to
to.
be,
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
He's barred by prestigious institutions such as the Chicago Tribune,
Exactly. That's more accurate.
and is a co-founder of the Electronic Intifada. and he has appeared on. But I'm gonna guess these places wouldn't have you on today. But who knows?
No,
They wouldn't, right?
You've said the important things.
I should just say Ali Abunimah, Electronic Intifada, and your Twitter handle, right? But no, also what you've written remains. He has. Wait, where are your books?
They're right here.
I don't have them. I got the worst.
Here you go. Here you make this. Here you go. The battle for justice in Palestine. That's one, and then
The Battle for Justice in Palestine.
so you always keep them conveniently.
I have them in New York City, but I'm not in New York City. But they're great, and I've read them.
And one country. I'm looking myself backwards in the camera.
Right.
So one country, and the battle for justice in Palestine.
Yes. And they're both very good, and I would have them, but I haven't been in New York City for a while, so that's where my books are. Yeah, but then let me guess, you haven't appeared on CNN or MSNBC or PBS lately?
No, and actually, the last time I was booked on CNN was several years ago, and I went to the studio and I put on my tie and everything, which I never wear, and they had me all wired up, and it's like a several hour commitment when you do one of these things, because you have to go there and you have to and so I was in the chair with the thing in my ear and everything. And then just like 2 minutes before the time, they said, "Oh, sorry, we're not going to have time to get to you. Thank you for coming in."
Why?
So that was my last experience. Well, they never explained. I think there was some breaking news, like, I don't know,
Chris Cuomo doing his comedy act with his brother, maybe
something. Yeah, it was a couple of years ago. Well, I think it was during one of Israel's massacres in Gaza.
Right, so obviously that's not really front and center. It's not a priority.
No, well, it's not so. I mean, it's important, but it's not something you'd want to talk to a Palestinian about.
Well, that's why I'm confused why they would have booked you in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously a mistake, and it was like discovered in time before I actually made it on air.
Maybe they thought you were like a white woman named Ali at first or something.
It happened. It's like I do get. I get that sometimes. So.
Yeah. Well, we are glad to have you.
Thank you.
And this is a much more fun show than anything you'll find on MSNBC. But let's see. Should we play this clip that is now being denounced and has a clip that has launched 1,000 petitions? Okay. And this is going to be a big deal because it's a big deal just to prepare people. It's a big deal because there was actually a funny and biting joke on Saturday Night Live. Right.
And that in itself
is newsworthy, right?
Is a major story. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're going to get some and Jack, by the way, is a very interesting guest because he is someone who has had a personal feud with Michael Che, but he's so committed to fairness that he's going to, as you'll see, defend him.
We'll talk about this, yeah.
Okay.
Israel is reporting that they vaccinated half of their population. And I'm going to guess it's the Jewish half.
Now, I should have offered a trigger warning because that is anti-Semitic, racist bile that perpetuates libel somehow, the blood libel thing. That doesn't even work. Like, guys, do better. We can do better. There's so many anti-Semitic stereotypes. You got to be able to find one that works better with that one. But that is now being condemned. And of course, perhaps if Israel were actually vaccinating everyone, including and if they were not blocking COVID vaccinations from getting into Gaza, perhaps it would be an unfair thing to say. But Ali, can you tell us about the reality there?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like I said, I just want to get this off my chest before we get into the serious stuff, is that one of the things I cannot understand about the United States is like why every Monday or Sunday or whatever it is, there are news reports about what was on Saturday Night Live.
I mean, there's a whole cottage industry of literally just describing television shows, and that is news. That's news.
Particularly Saturday Night Live, as if Saturday Night Live is one of the branches of government.
Yeah.
But this is actually somewhat newsworthy because Michael Che's joke there was biting, and the reason that Israel defenders and Israel lobby are going nuts over it and denouncing it as anti-Semitic is because it points to a truth that is pretty unpalatable, which is that you have COVID apartheid in Israel and vaccine apartheid now. And so what is the reality? Israel has been praised by people all over the world. Dr. Fauci, Saint Anthony Fauci has been praising Israel, for vaccinating so many people so quickly. But what's not talked about is that millions of Palestinians, 5 million Palestinians who live under Israeli military rule in the West Bank and Gaza Strip are not being given vaccines, even though they live under the full authority of the Israeli government. The reason we say apartheid is because what is apartheid? It's a system of government where you have two groups of people living under one ruler who are treated in completely different ways because of their characteristics. In this case, it's whether you're Jewish or not. And so you have in the West Bank and Gaza millions of Palestinians who are not being vaccinated. And Israel is actually making it harder for Palestinians to deal with COVID. In Gaza, you have 2 million Palestinians who actually the Palestinian Authority was able to get some doses of the Sputnik, the Russian vaccine, and Israel blocked them from getting into Gaza. But what you also have in the West Bank, and this really, I think, brings home the kind of Jim Crow apartheid nature of it, is that if you are an Israeli settler living in the West Bank on land stolen from Palestinians, you will get a vaccine.
Right.
But if you're a Palestinian living next door to that settlement, you will not get a vaccine.
I thought there was a post by Avi Mayer, who was responding to this. This is one of the people that is very upset by this post, by this joke. He said, every Israeli citizen, Jewish and Arab, Muslim, Christian, or if any of no faith, is eligible to be vaccinated. 2/3 of Israel's Arab citizens over 60 have been, which I think there's a really important key word there, which is every Israeli citizen. And who is allowed to be a citizen of Israel, even if they are under sort of like the rule and government pressure of Israel.
So he's telling a partial truth, you know, and he's lying by omission. Let me put it that way. Avi Mayer is one of the most skilled
I can put it up here.
Pro-Israel propagandists, and he's lying by omission. It is true that all Israeli citizens are eligible for vaccination. And who are Israeli citizens? Well, you've got about 5.5–6 million Jewish citizens. They will all be vaccinated, including the settlers in the West Bank. Then you have about 1.5 million Palestinians who are citizens of Israel. They are eligible for vaccinations. That's true. That's what he's saying. But what he's not mentioning is that 5 million Palestinians who live under Israeli military rule in the West Bank and under Israeli siege and control in the Gaza Strip are not being vaccinated and cannot be vaccinated because they have no independent ability to get vaccines. And we're not talking about here Israel vaccinating Palestinians in the West Bank out of the goodness of its heart. We're talking about obligations Israel has as the occupying power under international law, specifically the Fourth Geneva Convention. The Fourth Geneva Convention comes out of the horrors of the world wars. So it's supposed to be the distillation of the lessons that we have learned from the atrocities of the 20th century and before. And the Fourth Geneva Convention is very clear and explicit that the occupying power is responsible for the health, welfare, sanitation, and hygiene of the civilian population under its occupation. And the Geneva Convention is explicit about the occupying power's responsibility with respect to epidemics and disease. So Israel, by refusing to vaccinate the 5 million stateless Palestinians who live under its military occupation, is committing a war crime. So if Avi Maya had any decency, which I can tell you from long experience with him, he doesn't. But if he did have any decency, he would be demanding that Israel immediately begin vaccinating the 5 million Palestinians living under Israeli COVID apartheid.
Right, but I mean, there's so many PR points, Hezbollah, right? Points about how, this is just, it's not up to Israel. They're not doing anything. It's up to the Palestinians. It's up to Hamas. Could you just debunk some of the common talking points that are lobbed against the Palestinian people, basically?
Yeah, one of the defenses that I've heard Israel propagandists make is they say, oh, well, there's the Oslo Accords. This was an accord between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization in 1993. And it set up the Palestinian Authority, which is this sort of kind of Bantustan government. The Bantustans were the nominally independent homelands that the racist government of South Africa set up in the 1970s and 80s to say to the world, look, we're not oppressing black people. They have their own governments. These Bantustans were not actually independent and had no control. This was a fig leaf for white supremacy. And the Palestinian Authority functions in a similar way. So Israel violates the Oslo Accords 24/7, 365 days a year. It respects none of it respects none of the things it agreed to in the Oslo Accords. But when Israel is challenged about its obligations, all of a sudden it says, well, wait a minute, we have the Oslo Accords, we must respect them, where the Palestinian Authority is now responsible for the people there. So it's a way for Israel to throw off its responsibility. But the key points are that the Oslo Accords, number one, Palestinians don't have a truly independent government. The Palestinian Authority is not free to act. Palestinians in the West Bank control very little of the land in the West Bank. They control little slivers of land. Israel controls the vast majority of the West Bank. Palestinians are not free to import and export things from the West Bank. They're not free to travel in or out. And in Gaza, the situation is even worse, where it is under an Israeli siege, which is bolstered, of course, by the Egyptian dictatorship of Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, which is closely allied with Israel and the Biden administration. See how I don't skip a beat. There's no honeymoon
Yeah, of course.
With me. So the Biden-backed Sisi tyranny in Egypt and the Biden/Kamala Harris-backed Israeli apartheid regime together besiege the Gaza Strip, so no one can get in and out. I know people in Gaza who have to travel abroad for medical care. It's very difficult. Sometimes you have to wait weeks or months to get permission to travel outside Gaza from Israel to go to the West Bank or to go to hospitals in Israel, because the medical system in Gaza is under collapse because of the Israeli siege. So Israel has destroyed the Palestinian healthcare system effectively and is now not giving vaccines to Palestinians living under its military rule. So that's the reality. And if anything, the SNL joke didn't capture the full horror of the situation. So, of course, Israel and its lobby are screaming anti-Semitism at the top of their lungs, because that is a very effective way, or has been a very effective way, for them to distract attention from the brutal reality and to try to turn Israel into the victim instead of the perpetrator, which is what it in fact is.
Right. And it's also interesting. It's like, so the idea that you can't report on something because it perpetuates a stereotype, like Epstein is not a good guy and he's Jewish, and there is a stereotype about Jewish men being perverts, but it's still a story. Like you can always find a way to delegitimize something, but if your claim is that something perpetuates a stereotype, do you know what I mean? Like this one doesn't even work because I don't know what the stereotype is. Like that Israel does bad things, like that happens. Like Bernie Madoff, we're not supposed to talk about him because of the stereotype of like the greedy, dishonest Jew.
Well, I mean, you know, let's remember that it's Israel that describes itself as a Jewish state.
Right.
You know, in the same way that other countries may, describe themselves a certain way, Israel describes itself as a Jewish state. But we have to be very clear and careful that, you know, myself as a Palestinian and Palestinians traditionally, we refuse the equation between Israel on the one hand and Jews and Judaism on the other hand. Israel doesn't act in the name of Jews everywhere.
Right.
Benjamin
Benjamin
Netanyahu is not the prime minister of the Jewish people as he claims to be, or as some of his associates have claimed he is. And so Israel, and conversely, of course, Jews are not collectively responsible for Israel's crimes. Israel is recognized as a state in the international system and therefore has to be held to the obligations of a state. It is a signatory of the Fourth Geneva Convention, and it has to be held accountable for its crimes. And the fact that Israel's population, or that 50%, roughly now just under 50% of the people who live under Israeli rule are Jews, doesn't give Israel a pass. The fact that Israel claims to be a Jewish state, Palestinians don't care that Israel, let me put it this way. When Algerians were fighting against French colonialism, it wasn't anti-French, it was anti-colonial. When Indian people were fighting against British imperialism and British colonialism, it wasn't because they were British, they weren't anti-English.
Right.
Indians weren't offended that, we're being colonized, but that these people are English. They were aggrieved by the fact that they're being colonized and ruled by a foreign power. So the effort to, how are you going to turn Israel into a victim? It's a nuclear power. It has one of the world's strongest armies. They routinely shoot dead, unarmed Palestinians for protesting for their rights. They demolish Palestinian homes just to steal the land from under them. If you're a Palestinian in the West Bank, you can't even dig a well on your own land. You can't put up cisterns to collect rainwater because Israel claims that it owns the rain that falls onto Palestinian land. So when you look at Israel in 2014, in its attack on Gaza, killed 1 in every 1,000 Gaza residents during 51 days. It killed 551 children in 51 days. It's 11 children a day during the attack on Gaza. It obliterated entire neighborhoods. It dropped the equivalent almost of the Hiroshima bomb on Gaza in terms of high explosives. It tortures Palestinians. It keeps Palestinian children in prison. Israel is the only country in the world that routinely subjects children to military trials, and only Palestinian children. Only Palestinian children. So when you have an apartheid state, a military occupier, an ethnic cleanser, an apartheid state as defined, of course, not just by Palestinians who have been accurately, hashtag believe Palestinians, right? Palestinians have been telling people for decades the reality of
We
Israel.
should listen to their lived experience
Yes,
for once.
yeah, but we're not supposed to. But now, just in the past few weeks, Israel's most prestigious or best known human rights group, B'Tselem, recently came out with a big announcement that, yes, okay, we finally agree with the Palestinians. This is apartheid. Israel is set up in every way to maintain Jewish supremacy at the expense of the Palestinian people who live here. So what I'm saying is, when you have this panorama of oppression, of occupation, of destruction, of land theft, of racism, by a regime that is allied with every right-wing government on earth. I didn't hear all of the previous panel, or should I say manel, as someone said.
It's not my fault. Well, come on. Look, there's a lot of me. There is
a lot. Yeah,
and I had lots of women. I have lots of women on, but yeah, tonight was a sausage fest.
Somebody texted it to me, so I just had to say it. You actually, you're the equivalent of at least 5 of those dudes anyway, just by yourself. But as the previous panel was saying, they're talking about fascism in Poland, in Hungary, in the United States. All of these are Israel's best friends in the world.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's not an anomaly. There's a reason for that. So how do you turn this brutal apartheid regime into a victim? Is you have to scream at everyone who criticizes it, everyone who calls it out, that they're an anti-Semite, because anti-Semitism is racism, is bigotry, is something we all have to fight.
It's something that happens, for instance, in the governments of Poland and Hungary, for instance, allies of Netanyahu.
Among Israel's best friends, the white supremacist, anti-Semitic Trump administration, Israel's best friend in the whole world. And it's a way to change the subject. So now, look, we're doing it too. Now we're talking about, is this anti-Semitism? Isn't it anti-Semitism? Instead of talking about what Israel is doing to Palestinians. So all the discussion, I was looking before the show at the coverage, like SNL under fire for anti-Semitic joke.
Right.
So it's a great tactic to change the subject, to intimidate people, because not everyone is as used to being smeared and lied about by Israel and its thuggish lobby as I am, because every day I'm called a Nazi for saying for reporting
are human beings.
Yeah, and for reporting the reality of what Israel is doing. But a lot of people, they're like, maybe I'll stay away from that.
Yeah, of course.
I don't need. So the Avi Mayas of the world. Avi Maya works for, I'm not sure which Israel lobby group. I think he's still with the American Jewish Committee, which is one of the foremost Israel lobby groups in the country. Before that, he was with Israel's Jewish agency doing official propaganda, or Hasbara. So, those folks will never have a discussion. Avi Maya will never talk about the reality of 5 million Palestinians denied vaccines under Israeli military occupation. So we have to talk about it, and then we have to spend extra time and effort fending off the lies and the smears and the defamation by Israel and its lobby that, we're anti-Semitic for saying, 5 million Palestinians should be entitled to vaccinations, especially when the settlers who have stolen their land by force and are living on it in violation of international law are getting vaccines.
I mean, frankly, also, COVID's not gonna go away either. It's like, I know, like, whenever you see these statistics, I always like have to scoff a little bit, because you see the statistics of like the percentage of the population that is vaccinated in every country, and they always show Israel, and they're like 70% is vaccinated, and I'm like, well, but not really. You know what I mean? Like, that's not going to get you to that doesn't count as the 80% vaccination rate you need to get to like actually beat back COVID, because there's 5 million people sort of among them, and certainly among the settlements, that will not be receiving vaccinations.
And 5 million people who serve, I mean, we have to understand this as a cheap and disposable labor pool for Israel, because every day tens of thousands of Palestinians are allowed into Israel under a very onerous system of permits and checkpoints. If you look at some of the videos and photos that we've published at the Electronic Intifada of the checkpoints, you see it's just horrible. It's like people standing. You have to go at 3 a.m. to stand at the checkpoint in these long cage tunnels to be allowed through to work as a day laborer with no rights, with very little protections, and for meager wages, which Israelis won't work for, which is why they use Palestinians as a cheap labor pool. And these people are not being allowed to get, not getting vaccines. So that's the reality. It's not this beautiful multicultural reality of everyone is getting vaccines that professional propagandist Avi Mayo wants people to believe.
Yeah. Also, it's funny. It's like, it doesn't even, it reminds me of this. And here's Ali's great website, which I can't recommend enough. And it's funny because it's not even rational. Like, if they didn't have that, if they didn't let, quote unquote, right, Palestinians in to exploit them, you could almost understand. It would almost be rational to let basically people be ravaged by COVID. But it doesn't even make sense, because that's a communicable disease. Like, if their apartheid were more airtight, sure, it would make sense. But it reminds me of these Republicans who are like, they don't want undocumented workers who are in like slaughter factories. Right. They don't want them to have access to vaccines. It's like, do you understand like what this means for
Where's
you?
Where's the meat going? Yeah. What's happening to the meat?
Yeah, and then there's another aspect to this that has not been discussed, which is, where is Israel getting all the vaccines from? Because so the population is a lot smaller than the United States, but still a lot of countries have very few vaccines. How come Israel, it's not manufacturing them itself, how come Israel has seemingly a sufficient supply to vaccinate so many people so quickly? And we don't know the full answer to that, but we know part of it, because a couple of months ago, there were reports in the Israeli media, and I wrote about this too, that Germany had strong-armed or persuaded, whatever you want to say, the European Union to give Israel access to the supply of vaccines that the European Union was securing on the same basis as if Israel were a European Union member. And the German politicians that were quoted in the Israeli media, or the justification that was given, was that, this is part of Germany's responsibility to the Jewish people to make sure Israel gets the vaccines first. Well, at the time these reports came out, and this was before the vaccination programs had even started, people were saying, wait a minute, so Germany and the EU, you're going to make sure Israel gets access to vaccines. Does that mean that you're going to support Israel to vaccinate settlers in the West Bank, but not Palestinians. So that concern was being raised before this vaccination program even started. I wrote to the German foreign ministry, I wrote to the German embassy in Tel Aviv and asked them explicitly, so here are the reports that say you're helping Israel to get the vaccine. Are you going to guarantee that Palestinians have access to the vaccine on the same basis as Israelis? Or are you going to make sure that the vaccines that you supply or you provide Israel access to are not used to set up an apartheid vaccination regime where settlers get vaccines and Palestinians don't? And they would not answer those questions. And I've not seen them held to account publicly by anyone. And in fact, what happened was wherever Israel got the vaccines from, including whether it's from the European Union or through Germany, Israel is in fact using them for in an apartheid vaccination program. And the irony is that supposedly Germany was doing this to meet its historic responsibility and learning the lessons of the past. How are you learning the lessons of the past if you're helping a military occupier to discriminate against a civilian population it's occupied? How is that atoning for Germany's crimes? It's compounding Germany's crimes. It's a moral outrage being disguised as goodness.
Yeah.
But, to even discuss that means that you're going to be smeared and defamed as an anti-Semite. So that's why there's so little discussion of this on any other media. And I'm certainly not going to be invited onto CNN or MSNBC to talk about it.
I mean, that's what's so frustrating. It's like, it really is, like, I often say that Israel is kind of like the original, weaponized identity politics entity, because it really is like, they really take the Holocaust, and I had family, and who were killed in that, but they take that and use that to justify whatever they're doing, and in a way that, like, we see, it's like a weaponization of trauma instead of the lesson of that trauma and injustice being to prevent more trauma and tragedy and violence. It's used to justify it and whitewash it, which is totally sordid. But you see a similar thing, right? Like when you see identity politics weaponized in order to shield it from shield criticism, valid criticism, and there's something there that happened, like racism is real, right? And then but when people do something and use that as a weapon to silence critics, it's very sordid and it's dangerous. And I mean, it's obviously dangerous, but it's just perverse.
I just wanted to pop in for 1 second and just say, I'm someone who has gotten into it directly with Michael Che. Michael Che made fun of me for the soup that I was eating at a certain point on his Instagram story, and he and I had a long back and forth, and I do have to defend him for this, and I suspect that he'll be forced to apologize over this, probably on air with somebody, same way they had to with Dan Crenshaw when they made another funny joke about how he looks like a pirate or something like that. Listen, I would say the only thing that I would note on this joke is that he probably should have said, I guess it's not the Palestinian half, because then they couldn't have gotten as mad about anti-Semitism, and the joke would have been more specific. I'm not going to get into the intricacies of SNL joke writing because I don't want to give credence to the idea that SNL is funny.
Writes jokes, yeah.
But the reality is that Israel defines itself as a Jewish state, and what that means in practice is that Jews have better, special and better rights than Palestinians, and that's enshrined in law. The so-called nation-state law that Israel enshrined in 2018 explicitly gives Jews better rights, more rights, superior rights hierarchical superiority over Palestinians. And that 2018 law was simply reinforcing what already existed since Israel was founded. One of Israel's basic laws is the so-called law of return, which says that, Katie, I understand you've mentioned before that you're Jewish, so I hope I'm not making any assumptions.
Some have claimed, yeah.
Yes. That Katie, under the so-called law of return, Katie has the right to move to the West Bank, get Israeli citizenship, get a salary, like get a UBI, basically, get a package, financial package.
Sounds like a
from
pretty
Israel.
good deal, Katie. What do you think?
It's not a bad idea. It sounds good. I might like to do it. It's not.
She has that right under the so-called law of return as an American, just on the basis of her religion or her ancestry. Whereas I, as a Palestinian, whose parents are born in Palestine, whose grandparents are born in Palestine, whose great-grandparents are born in Palestine, and so on, and millions of Palestinians like me, including millions who are stateless, living in refugee camps in different countries, have no right to go there, not even to visit. So that's the inherent racism of the so-called law of return, that says that someone who has never set foot in the country has more rights to it than someone who was born there, whose parents were born there, back up to generations. And no other country has such racist laws. I've often heard, for example, people say, oh, but Ireland has a law that allows you to get citizenship to the Irish diaspora. That's true, but that actually shows just how racist the Israeli law is, because the Irish law says that any person who has one grandparent born in Ireland can claim citizenship.
Right.
It doesn't require that grandparent be Irish Catholic, Gaelic, speak Gaelic, whatever. Yeah. It includes Protestants, it includes Catholics, it includes anybody whose
Irish Jews.
Irish Jews, of course, and there is an Irish Jewish community. So if Israel had a law of return like the Irish law of return, all the Palestinians would be able to come back.
Right.
So, but that's not the case. Israel discriminates doesn't allow Palestinians to return to their country solely and exclusively because they are not Jewish. So what I'm saying here is that has to be confronted. We can't really skirt around it.
Right. No, I agree. And Jack, I know you have to leave.
I do, but this has been such a good conversation. It's good to talk to you.
Can I just, before Jack leaves, I want to know more about the soup you were eating.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Well, I actually very much deserved it. Now, listen,
ironically.
he was making fun of me for being poor and having to have Campbell's soup. However, I also forgot to add the water to the soup, and so I was complaining that the soup tasted too much like ketchup. So the better joke would have been that I am actually too dumb to make Campbell's soup.
But how did he know that? He wouldn't have been able to know that.
That's what the post was about. I was complaining about how it tasted bad, and people were like, "Did you add water?" And I was like, I guess not.
Are you serious? Oh my God, no, you gotta add. I love Campbell's chicken noodle soup, by the way. I absolutely love it. You gotta add some water. In fact, after this, I'm gonna have some,
It sounds like you had it coming then.
I did. Exactly, maybe I did. Well, good to talk to you, and I will see you all later on.
Bye,
goodbye.
Bye. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's true that we should be focusing on the crimes committed by the Israeli government, but it also, for better or for worse, I do think that we need to sadly debunk the claims, because if we don't, for some people, obviously that it doesn't land because they know that it's bullshit. But there are people who don't know about it, and then they see something and they're like, "Oh, I guess that's anti-Semitic."
It's become the catch-all. I mean, there's nothing. Israel and its defenders have always accused critics of being anti-Semites, but in the past couple of years, they've taken it to a new level where almost any criticism of Israel is now deemed anti-Semitic. And this is this is of course harmful to Palestinians because it's designed and is in many ways effective at stopping us from talking about what Israel is doing to Palestinians. It's meant to silence us, but it's also harmful, incredibly harmful to Jews.
Yeah, I know.
Because anti-Semitism is real. There are Nazis walking into synagogues in the United States and shooting people. We saw that in Pittsburgh. We saw that in Poway. And what happened after those attacks was that Israel and many of its lobby organizations, not all of them, but some of them, tried to use these horrific attacks by white supremacist, anti-Semitic extremists to attack the Palestine Solidarity Movement and to basically say, oh, well, yes, there is right-wing anti-Semitism, but there's left-wing anti-Semitism. So they tried to both sides Nazis, murdering Jews in synagogues. And we've seen the same phenomenon in Europe. And what's the reality? What's the reality? We've seen statistics. I think you've talked about them on this show or other. Now it's like I'm at the point where I mix up all the YouTube shows. Yeah. It's like
I guess we're all the same to you, Ali.
It's that you're all on each other's shows all the time.
Yeah, no, I was trying to make it like it was.
I lose track. Right. But what I'm saying is that we've seen reports that the authorities in the United States consider white supremacists to be the biggest quote unquote terrorist threat or violent threat, and statistically have been. And recently, just in the past few days, statistics came out in Germany of a big upsurge in anti-Semitic attacks. Something like 2,200 anti-Semitic attacks were recorded by German police in 2020, and 94% of them, 1,300 had been categorized by political motivation. In other words, they'd been able to determine some kind of motivation for 1,300 of the attacks. 94% were from the right. 94%. So of the 1,300, something like 1,200 and something were from the right. 9 were from the left, according to the German police. 18 were religiously motivated and about 40 couldn't be categorized. So that's the reality, is that the vast majority of this is coming from the racist, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic right. But you look at the politicians in Germany, just as you see many politicians in the United States, and they're obsessed with blaming the left, falsely blaming the left for anti-Semitism, falsely blaming the Palestine Solidarity Movement for anti-Semitism, because the reality is these people, Israel and its lobby, are more threatened by people calling for equality for Palestinians than they are by the white supremacist, neo-Nazi extreme right, because Israel feels very comfortable with the Donald Trumps, the Steve Bannons, the Narendra Modis, the Viktor Orbáns of Hungary, the Alternative for Deutschland, the neo-Nazi party that has 100 seats in the German parliament, that has very close ties to some very prominent Israeli lawmakers who endorse it and say these people are our great friends. So that's the reality. Anti-Semitism is coming from the right. It's coming from white supremacists. It's coming from the same quarters that inspire the murders of Muslims in the mosque in Quebec City, in Christchurch, in the two shisha bars in the German city of Hanau 1 year ago. But somehow, so those are the people, the same people or the same political ideologies, that they are murdering Muslims and murdering Jews. But there is this effort to drive a wedge between people and to claim that, to claim falsely that the anti-Semitism is coming from the left and from the Palestine Solidarity Movement. It's just not true. But it's about defending Israel. It's about shutting down criticism. It's about intimidating people into silence about Israel's apartheid and war crimes.
Yeah, and it's also ironic because it's like crying wolf, and it's trivializing the actual anti-Semitism that you refer to, and also it's like it's the wrong thing for Israel to do, but it also like that's not exactly good PR for people who care about anti-Semitism.
Well, it's I mean, Israel has always struggled with its PR messaging because it's used a number of strategies over the years, especially in recent years, where it has lost so much support, particularly on the left in Western countries in the United States. So support for Israel has really drained away among younger people, among people of color, among people in the base of the Democratic Party. We have poll after poll showing that. Of course, that's not reflected in the upper echelons of the Democratic Party. I'm talking about the base, the people who are drawn to Bernie Sanders and the squad and so on. And so Israel's propaganda shops in recent years have been puzzling over how can we win back that young, progressive, left-wing support. And so the strategy has been pinkwashing, which tries to falsely market Israel as, a haven for LGBTQ rights, while simultaneously demonizing Palestinians and falsely claiming that Palestinians execute people for being gay, or falsely claiming that same-sex relations are outlawed in the under the Palestinian Authority, which is not true. They are not outlawed. I actually, a couple of years ago, got the Associated Press to issue a correction to report that falsely claimed that there are laws in the West Bank against same-sex relationships. There aren't. There may be social taboos about that.
Sure,
there are in Israel too. There are in the United States, but there are no laws against it. So it's a strategy that involves lying both about Palestinians, about Israel, and greenwashing, which is about falsely portraying Israel as a environmental and water management, and when Israel is actually one of the most environmentally destructive regimes in the world, destroying Palestinian agriculture, trees, water sources, incredibly wasteful Israeli settlements, which use per capita multiple times the amount of water that Palestinians use, and so on. So greenwashing, pinkwashing, these are all strategies aimed at trying to win back progressive liberal support for Israel. And at the same time, so that's kind of the and then of course there was very crass propaganda trying to market Israel as basically a sex tourism destination. This is when they would put Israeli soldiers, in sort of what the writer Mark Simpson calls sporno, sort of soft porn, using Israeli soldiers in kind of soft porn imagery to try and glamorize the Israeli army, glamorize these killers and occupiers. But I'm saying all of that to just contrast that with the hammer, which is to immediately hammer anyone who criticizes Israel as an anti-Semite. And it's really important for people to take a very principled position on this, which is that we do not tolerate any form of bigotry, including anti-Semitism. At the same time, we do not tolerate, and we refuse to be intimidated by Israel's efforts to falsely smear people as anti-Semites in order to silence and muzzle criticism.
Yeah, and it's also, again, it is like you were referring to earlier, it's anti-Semitic to suggest that Israel represents all Jews, that all Jews support the Israeli government. And it's a stereotype, it's a stereotype of anti-Semitism that conflates Jewish identity with like blind support of Israel. And also, of course, places like AIPAC, which claim to speak for all Jews, don't help, because then people see that organizations like that, and they claim to speak for all Jews. So they're also perpetuating anti-Semitism.
And Donald Trump remember Donald Trump? He's been disappeared. Apparently, he's coming back.
Well, he's actually he's ruling Russia right now because
right. So remember, Donald Trump used to refer to, when speaking to Jewish Americans, he did this on more than one occasion. He would refer to Benjamin Netanyahu as your prime minister.
Yeah.
And people would rightly say, hey, isn't that a little bit anti-Semitic to claim that American Jews are not actually real American citizens? They're more, their real
Double
leader
loyalty.
is.
Right.
Yeah. But that's actually what Israel claims. It claims to represent Jews all over the world. And so some people wrongly believe Israel when it claims to speak for all Jews. But Israel is the entity that is putting the Star of David, the symbol of Judaism, on tanks, on uniforms, on warplanes that are used to attack Palestinians, to steal their land, to kill them. And when Israel does that, and yes, I am going to say this, I'm happy to make this comparison. When ISIS commits atrocities and claims to be doing it in the name of Muslims or Islam, Muslims, some people collectively blame them, and that's wrong, and we reject it. And we must reject it equally when Israel claims to act in the name of Jewish people. Israel's crimes are not the collective responsibility of Jewish people, despite the fact that Israel tries to implicate all Jews in its crimes.
Yeah. Just some super chats that are relevant to the conversation. Let's see. Yabitz writes, does our guest, Mr. Abunimah, know of Miko Peled?
Yes, of course I do know Miko Peled, and I've been on his, he organized a couple of really good discussions on this very topic, which you can find on his website, I believe, that I took part in, and other people took part in, that are really worth watching as well.
Jordan Allen writes, well, this is interesting. I love and respect Ali so much. I'm not always Katie's biggest fan, but I admire her platforming Palestinian defenders very much.
Who is that? Why are they not your biggest fan?
I don't know.
That seems outrageous.
That's outrageous.
To me.
Canceled.
Yeah.
But I platformed him by reading the super chat.
Right.
And then he also wrote, imagine thinking we own the rain that falls on the Palestinians would be a good look for Israel. Shameful. Farid Sobhani. Don't forget Israel's foreign crimes in Syria, assassination abroad in Iraq and Iran, bombing Iraq's facilities, etc. Yeah, good to remember. Priyankar Sarkar writes, thanks for shining the spotlight on Palestine. Ali Abunimah is a great speaker. Murphy writes, let them eat beef, but I'm not sure what that means. John Michael, the funny thing, Semitic means a member of the people of ancient southwestern Asia, including the Hebrews and Arabs. So if you're denigrating Palestinians, you're actually being anti-Semitic. And then from Bill Cole, I'm interested to hear Ali's political strategy to advance a one-state solution. Is there support in the Knesset? Why is a one-state superior to two-state solutions?
Well, one-state solution, or I think the argument that many people are now catching up to after resisting for many years, is that there is a de facto one-state reality, and it's an apartheid regime, and segregation into two states is really not practical and not just. And therefore, the solution that makes the most sense and is the one that we claim to want here in the United States is equal rights for everyone, equal rights under the law, whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're Christian, Muslim, Jewish, atheist, whatever it is, you should have equal rights. So I don't know why that's such a difficult idea in the context of Palestine and the Israeli issue. Of course, we see in the United States that there is fierce and vigorous resistance to the idea of democracy and equal rights. I caught some snippets of your previous discussion. There was a consensus, a gentleman's agreement, one of your speakers earlier called it, that the US was a white Christian nation. And now that's being challenged. We see the white Christianists resisting that and fighting back and saying, no, we want to maintain control of this country. So, but I do think that in the United States, equal rights, real democracy, real freedom of religion, equality of religion, or freedom of not religion is superior to white Christian nationalism as a system of government. And I think in Palestine, the same is true. I think a democracy that guarantees equal rights for everyone, whether they're Muslim, Christian, Jewish, whatever it is, Israeli, Palestinian, whether they speak Arabic or Hebrew or any other language, equal rights, equal protections, restitution is a superior system to Jewish supremacy enshrined in law and enforced by an army that sends snipers to shoot people who protest. So that's just my values. My values are that equality is better than military occupation and oppression. I understand there's people who disagree with that.
Well, so I want to engage one of the arguments that you'll hear from people who I don't think are kind of are ghouls necessarily, and which is that, but what will happen if there's a one state? I'm not agreeing with this position. I'm just putting this common talking point that I think actually doesn't read as kind of absurd as it is, which is, what's going to happen to Jews? They're not going to have a home, and we saw what happened with the Holocaust. So what's your response to that?
Well, that's two different things. I mean, you're going from Jews might not be safe to the Holocaust is quite
right,
a big
but that's
leap.
what they. Yes, I know, but that's cited often.
I get that. Well, number one,
Yeah.
the Holocaust was done by European Christians against European Jews, so that has nothing to do with the Palestinians. Despite Netanyahu a few years ago trying to blame Palestinians for the Holocaust, and you remember he actually said, I think it was in 2017, that Hitler didn't want to kill the Jews. It was the Mufti, the Palestinian Mufti, who persuaded Hitler to kill. Some absolutely absurd thing. But I mean, okay, so the argument is that if there's a one-state solution, Palestinians will be the majority, or at least, right now they're half the population. And so what will happen to Jews? Well, I mean, the same arguments were made to defend apartheid in South Africa. So there were people who said, and I'm old enough to remember this, believe it or not, people would say that, yes, apartheid is wrong, but if the whites give up power, they'll be slaughtered by the angry black population who will take their revenge, and whites will be thrown into the sea. And the white press in South Africa was full of atrocity stories from all over Africa, saying, look what's happening in Mozambique, look what's happening in Nigeria, look what's happening in Kenya. If we give up control here, the same will happen to us, we'll be slaughtered. So there was a strategy to also terrorize the white population that, there was no alternative to apartheid. Even if you were uncomfortable with apartheid, what was the alternative? Right. Because it would be, quote
suicide.
Unquote, national suicide. That was the term that was used in South Africa. Morally speaking, that's repugnant. You can't say well, we must continue to take this argument to its extreme. We must continue to enslave people, because if we free the slaves, they will get their revenge on us. That can't be an argument for maintaining slavery. So, but, ruling populations that are oppressing others do historically have this fear of giving up power, because they know they've done bad things.
Right.
And so they are afraid of giving up power. The answer to that is that historically, we have seen populations not doing that. That hasn't happened in South Africa. In fact, one of the problems with post-apartheid South Africa is how little loss of privilege and economic control the white population generally has gone through. The continuous massive economic inequality along racial lines in South Africa. And the same is true in other post-settler colonial societies. So there's no reason to expect Palestinians to take to take bloody revenge on the Jewish population, unless you hold the same kinds of racist stereotypes about Palestinians that were used against Black South Africans. The better answer is to acknowledge that, yes, the Israeli Jewish population will have some unease about giving up control. The best way to deal with that is to have a democratic system that protects everyone's rights. And the sooner you put that in place, the better. And the easier that transition will be, and the fairer it will be. So that's how I would answer it, is that you can't say, well, Israel must continue committing atrocities against the Palestinians because the Palestinians might want to take their revenge. That's not a good practical argument,
Right.
and it's morally repugnant as well.
It's not international law. Yeah. I think what complicates it, not morally or legally, I think that although I guess the Boers in South Africa, they had some kind of inferiority complex. I think what makes it easier for people to fall prey to that argument is that Israel was founded for totally geopolitical strategic reasons, not related to caring about, the attempted extermination of Jews. But because it was founded after the Holocaust, people still see Israel as this, it has this David and Goliath thing, although it's totally the Goliath is the big one. I can't remember. Right? Like, it's totally that, but it was founded as a David, but propped up by other Goliaths. And
the myth, you have to sort of untangle the propaganda from the reality. So the propaganda has always been, and this has been used to inculcate particularly American Jewish support for Israel, was to say, well, we need Israel.
Yeah.
Because what if they come for the Jews again?
Right.
Right. So the idea is, you need a spare country. But whereas a lot of liberal American Jewish support for Israel, people who in the United States were fiercely secular, fiercely in favor of separation of church and state, because they saw separation of church and state as being important to guarantee the civil rights of Jews, among others.
Right.
So, the ADL very strongly supported, separation of church and state in the United States, but completely supportive of religious nationalism in Israel. And then, of course, Israel cannot exist without American support. So if Israel is going to get if the United States is going to get so dangerous for Jews that Jews can't live here, why is it going to keep supporting Israel?
Right.
and then the propaganda is contradictory because, at the same time, you'll hear this from pro-Israel advocates or Israel lobby groups that Israel is necessary because it's the safe haven for Jews, but at the same time, it's the most dangerous place on earth for Jews because of Hamas, because of Hezbollah, because of Iran, because of, Ali Abunimah, because of, the electronic intifada, because of Michael Che on SNL, because, that it's
existential threat. That's why they have to bomb Iran, right? Because
everything
they're like
is
2 minutes away from
threat.
right.
So if you're Jewish, where do you feel safer? Living in the United States or living in Israel? Living in Germany, where hundreds of thousands of young Israelis or tens of thousands of young Israelis have moved to Berlin because they feel safer in Germany and they feel they have a better future in Germany than they do in Israel. So, there's a massive brain drain from Israel, where a lot of the most educated, potentially the most sort of liberal, have left, and you'll find them in the United States. You'll find them in the European Union. Many of them taking advantage of getting back the nationalities of their parents or grandparents in European countries and moving to the EU or moving to the United States because they don't want to be in Israel. So there's a lot of myth which is not easily being, from what I see, not easily being transmitted to the younger generation of American Jews. There's a lot more skepticism among young American Jews about Israel, if not outright rejection. And I think that is because many young American Jews are on the left, are progressive, do have universal values, and when they look at the situation through that lens, they cannot identify with Israel or Zionism.
Yeah, right. Like Peter Beinart put it, right, writing about a Frank Luntz study, like instead of checking their liberalism at the door in the name of Zionism, younger Jews have checked their Zionism at the door in the name of liberalism.
Right, and if you check your Zionism at the door, lose the ticket, lose the coat check ticket too, or flush it down the toilet.
Right. Oh, right. Yeah. Check it at the door and never get it back.
Yeah. Never pick it up again.
Yeah. Check it at the door and then light it on fire.
But do still make sure to tip.
Tip, exactly. So don't light on fire because then it could harm the person at the door check.
Do tip the door check person, but don't pick up your Zionism on the way out. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Put in a garbage can. Oh, no, but that'll put of history. But that you don't want to harm the door check person. You're right. So yeah, just check it and then never reclaim it.
Yeah.
Check it, tip the guy, and then actually you could be an ally, and I don't want to cost you your job, but maybe just destroy the jacket. Destroy the design. Oh, I can't say that. It's probably going to be a hate crime or something if I say that. This was great. You should come back. You should be like a regular feature.
Thank you. I love to come on your show. It is a little bit past my bedtime, but I did. I'm just kidding. Any time.
Oh, right, because it's 9:30 where you are, right?
It is 9:30, but it's later where you are.
You're it's 10:30. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not one of these night hawks.
Yeah, I am. I'm a night owl, but I'm trying to give it up. It's trying to practice sleep hygiene, which is such a gross term, isn't it? Gross. It's not like you're dirty if you don't sleep a lot or sleep early.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is that I can't sleep late in the morning, so no matter what time I go to bed, I'm still going to wake up at 5.
Right.
So if I go to bed
really at 5?
It's just what happens. I think you get to a certain age and you're. So for me, if I go to bed at midnight, I go to bed at 3, I'm still going to get up at 5. So that's why I need to get to bed at a reasonable time.
Well, if you don't mind, one more question, if that's okay.
For sure. Yeah.
Which is, if we could just get that app out of the way, Nick, so I can read the question. Where did it go? It was about the destruction of the intensifying destruction of Palestinian olive trees and the significance. And please tell people Canadian government is buying Elbeat drones. Did I say that right?
Yeah,
Elbeat.
yeah. Justin Trudeau is he wears his he famously had those rainbow flag socks with the Muslim like crescent and star on them as well. Like, so they were Eid Mubarak / rainbow flag socks.
Wow, LGBTQ.
And what I hear is that same pattern is going to be spray painted onto the Israeli drones. That
That's
Justin
beautiful.
Trudeau it's inspiring. As they fly over the Canadian Arctic, so they're buying these drones. They're called Hermes 900 drones that are made by this Israeli company called Elbit Systems, that brags that the drones are battle tested. And who are they battle tested on?
Oh yeah.
They are battle tested by killing Palestinians and surveilling Palestinians and using these drones to turn the lives of Palestinians, particularly in the Gaza Strip, into a living hell. So Justin Trudeau is buying those drones.
He just doesn't want to go to waste. That that violence.
Well, they're actually the Canadian government announcement was like just this. They said the drones will help us to patrol the Arctic and keep our waters clean and safe. So it was a perfect example of greenwashing.
Yeah, and pseudo woke. Yeah. Woke washing. We got to call that out too. Woke washing.
Yeah, woke washing. And the question about olive trees is really, this has been going on since the beginning. Somewhere on my shelf back here, I have a book documenting, it's called Sacred Landscape by Meron Benvenisti, which came out about 20 years ago, which documents the systematic destruction of Palestinian trees right in 1948, when Israel was established on the ruins of 500 Palestinian cities, towns, and villages. And since then, Israel has been systematically pushing Palestinians off the land. And the destruction of trees, the destruction of homes, the destruction of wells is about destroying the sustainability of Palestinian life on the land. Palestinians are very connected to the land because they have been living from agriculture for many generations. And so when you destroy the trees, which take many generations to grow to become productive, you sever the connection between the people and their land. And that's why Israel destroys these trees, while at the same time claiming that it is this fantastic environmental steward.
Wow, really great. Yeah, that's the like darkest part of it, right? That they are doing this good job, quote unquote, like they are administering a lot of vaccines. That makes it worse.
I mean, look, apartheid South Africa performed the first heart transplant. Right. That was done in apartheid South Africa by a white doctor. So, I mean, you'll often hear these other arguments for Israel say, oh, well, they invented this and they invented that. And I mean, even if that's true, so what? It's like, so should apartheid South Africa get a pass because a white South African doctor did the first heart transplant? So, well, then, okay, yeah, you can keep oppressing black people. That's fine because you invented heart transplants.
Well, no, I mean, there's that. There's like Israel invented this, they created that. They're so innovative. But I mean, it's more like the fact that they are being aggressive in vaccinating makes it that much grosser, because it's like they could do this. They could be vaccinating more people.
They could easily do it. But there are Israeli politicians, and they're not saying, "Oh, well, we just don't have enough vaccines," and we can't do. Apparently, they have a limitless supply of vaccines. There's been no shortage there. They could do it, but we have Israeli politicians like Ayelet Sheked, the former justice minister, Michal Kotler, who's actually the daughter of Justin Trudeau's anti-Semitism czar, Erwin Kotler. I mean, I put anti-Semitism in quotes because his real job is to crack down on Palestine solidarity activism. His daughter is a member of the Israeli parliament, and she and Ayelet Shaked, among others, have said no vaccines for the Palestinians until we get political concessions from them.
Right. Yeah, people are saying until like prisoners are released, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are the same kinds of Israeli politicians who routinely say, cut off the water supply to Gaza, don't let food in until we get back the remains of our soldiers. Apparently, there are the remains of 2 Israeli soldiers that Hamas is holding in Gaza. Meanwhile, Israel has the remains of hundreds of Palestinians that it refuses to return to their families for burial, which, of course, none of those politicians talk about.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking at I tweeted out notoriously anti-Semitic ABC is peddling this anti-Semitic myth by reporting on what the Israeli government has actually done. So they say this is so, I love this. This is such great PR. An Israeli official said Israel has received a request to allow 1,000 Sputnik 5 doses to be delivered to Gaza that was still being debated late Monday. It wasn't blocked. They're still contemplating it, the official said.
Okay, let's think about that for a second, because you have all these propagandists who say, well, Israel withdrew from Gaza. On the West Bank, they have the Palestinian and their response. Okay, right. So how come Palestinians have to wait for the Israeli government to allow them to get vaccines into Gaza? And these vaccines, this was going to be for, it was only like 1,000 or 2,000 doses. It was just to try to give some cover to the frontline health workers in Gaza who are working in a healthcare system that has been devastated by years of Israeli siege and warfare. So this was just about this wasn't even about mass vaccination in Gaza. It was just about trying to stave off collapse of the healthcare system by protecting the frontline workers. And even that Israel would not allow. Then once now they will probably, I don't know if they've done it yet. I haven't seen reports that they've approved it yet. But, just the vindictiveness of not even allowing them to bring in the vaccines for the healthcare workers in Gaza. What justification is there for that? I haven't even heard one.
Same thing. That's why they had to block, what was it? Cinnamon.
Yeah.
Remember?
Right.
They couldn't keep cinnamon come in.
Cinnamon, musical instruments, all kinds of stuff that Israel said could be a threat, so couldn't be allowed to go. I don't know if people in Gaza are known for really enjoying spicy food, so
yeah, it's their way of life.
Yeah, so maybe Israel felt that if we allow their cuisine to become too spicy, somehow that would be more of a threat. I'm not sure what the logic was there.
Yeah. Well, guys, everyone needs to share this right now. Everyone share this stream because we're so close. We keep getting really close to 1,000. And this is a very good stream. And we need to make sure people know about it. This one tonight.
You mean 1,000 people watching?
Yeah.
Because I can't see that on this thing I'm on.
Oh, got it. Yeah. We keep getting we've been at 990. I'm not going to make you stay out late.
I'm not getting off till we get to 1,000.
I know, right? Guys, he's not getting, well, that's not, that would incentivize us not to, because we, of course, want to hear more from Ali. But, guys, be an ally. Be an ally to Palestine by sharing this.
Yeah.
Sharing this stream.
But also the other thing I want to say while I'm here, because, I want to say, I know that a lot of your viewers are very progressive, very, very concerned about this issue, and very supportive already. That's great, and thank you for that. I just want to say, keep talking about it. Don't be intimidated by the smears and the lies and the defamation. The electronic intifada, I'm very proud of the work that my colleagues do. We are very meticulous about. We're very meticulous.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay, no, go ahead. We're very meticulous about our reporting, about our accuracy. So please use that as a resource. And the other thing I want to say is press the politicians on this issue, even your favorites, even the squad, even the so-called progressives, because they're not talking about this. And remember that this is the United States is the biggest sponsor and enabler of what Israel is doing. So it is our responsibility. And what is happening to Palestinians, Palestinians are so often the canary in the coal mine. Yeah. The canary in the coal mine. So what has been done to Palestinians for years is now being done to Iran, where the whole of Iran is under these brutal Obama, Trump, Biden's, Kamala Harris sanctions, which are preventing people from getting medicine, preventing people from getting essential health care that they need, because Iran is under such tight sanctions that financial transactions are blocked. So even if the U.S. says, oh, well, we don't block, we don't prohibit medicines, in reality, when you shut down a country's trade, when you shut down its ability to sell oil or sell its wares, you destroy its economy, you destroy its healthcare system. The U.S. is doing the same to Venezuela. It did the same to Cuba for 50 years. Before Gaza was under these brutal Israeli sanctions supported by the United States, the U.S. did it to Iraq. Before the 2003 Iraq war, I got my start really doing public activism and media and writing was really focused on the Bill Clinton sanctions against Iraq in the 1990s that killed more than 500,000 people by depriving them of medicine, by depriving them of the most basic needs. And remember Madeleine Albright, Bill Clinton's Secretary of State, who enforced these sanctions and bullied the world into supporting these Bill Clintons, these murderous Bill Clinton sanctions on the children of Iraq. When she was asked by Leslie Stahl, and this clip is on YouTube, anyone can find it, Leslie Stahl said, we've heard that 500,000 children have been killed by the sanctions on Iraq. Is it worth it? Madeleine Albright didn't say, no, wait a minute, Leslie, that number is wrong. She didn't challenge the number. Right. She said, well, it's very difficult, but we think the price is worth it. So you have to also see these sanctions, this siege that Israel is putting on Gaza and on Palestinians generally in the context of what the U.S. empire is doing. And sadly, I don't hear even the progressive politicians in Washington talking about what the U.S. is doing to all these countries. And now we see in Texas, where you have this big winter storm, it's not due to sanctions that that millions of people were without electricity or without clean water, but it is due to massive public disinvestment, to privatization, to crony capitalism. In other words, in a way, it's a form of sanctions against the American people, what this system is doing. When you take away public utilities, when you take away the responsibility of the government for people, the effect is the same, that millions of people are without the basic necessities of life. So if that's what's happening in Texas, imagine the impact on Venezuela or Iran of massive US sanctions and bullying the rest of the world into isolating these countries. So we have to be pushing our progressive politicians to oppose these imperial policies around the world, because they are directly related. The war economy, the imperial economy that destroys countries around the world is directly related to the disinvestment, to the impoverishment, to the immiseration of Americans that we're seeing play out now in so many disastrous ways across this country with the pandemic, with the effects of climate change and what we're seeing now in Texas across the country. We can't have a progressive politics that is narrowly focused on, saying Donald Trump is bad and Mitch McConnell is bad, and ignoring the role of the Democratic Party in this catastrophic global imperialism that the United States is inflicting on the world.
Amen.
That is my
secular amen.
That is my. That's it. I'm done now.
That's your story. You're sticking to it.
Yeah.
So, and you think that the squad is movable, potentially?
I don't know if they're movable or not, but I just know that nobody is going to get anywhere unless you are pressing them all the time. And I keep saying this, learn from the right. Learn from the right.
Yeah.
They do not coddle their politicians. They don't stand them.
Right.
They push them. The right, the Republicans are afraid of their base. The Democrats need to be afraid of their base.
They
the
just
progressives,
disdain them.
the squad need to be, they're not your auntie, they're not your cousin, they're not your BFF. They are politicians. They are members of the Imperial Senate and the Imperial Legislature. Hold them accountable and don't take yes for an answer. When they give you what you want, say, okay, now we want more.
Yeah.
I'm sick. I know, Twitter is not real life or whatever, but I am sick of people making excuses for them. I'm sick of people. I don't want to hear excuses for AOC and for the squad and for Bernie Sanders. I don't want to hear excuses. These are politicians. These are powerful people. They have massive platforms. They could do tremendous good with those platforms. And right now, what are they even talking about? They spent the last few weeks on another impeachment that was never going to go anywhere. And who's talking about relief anymore? Where are the $2,000 checks they promised people out the door that they were going to send out within a week? And people are going to remember these betrayals. People are going to remember these betrayals, and they should remember them, and they should punish them. They should not support them. They should not take people's support for granted. So even if you like them, even if you think they're great, even if, push them. Push them on all these things, including Palestine, because the discourse doesn't change. The politics don't move unless we move them. If you only say the things that people are already comfortable hearing, then nothing moves. You have to push beyond where people are comfortable.
Exactly.
And you have to be okay with being called names. It's like, I get called names all day long on Twitter or whatever. And then at the end of the day, I, make a nice dinner and read a book and it's okay. I wake up the next morning and do it again. I'm not doing the most dangerous job in the world. Okay. Right. So there is, it's not a big deal to criticize these people and to be criticized for it. But that's what we have to do. And I get so dispirited when I see so much reluctance and so much coddling of people who are seeking power. They're seeking power. They're not. What are they doing? What do they do? What are the Democrats going to do between now and 2022 before they lose the House again to the Republicans?
Yeah. I think that it's true. And even if you like them, push them. If you think that their hearts are in the right place, they need you pushing them to have the political ability to do it.
Yeah, I get very agitated about it, and I did really. I know we're very off topic here, but by the way, how you're at 1,000 yet?
No, but we're almost there.
Down?
978. It's just not. I'm getting I can't think about it. It's like,
are we actually driving the numbers down right now?
No, I think they're up and down. They're up and down. But I'm gonna have to yell at my audience another time. Look, it's like it goes up and down. But I love the audience that has shared this, and I don't want to alienate anyone. But we're gonna
do.
do it again. We're
do.
gonna do a big push with social media because I don't.
Why-
we
why
need
don't you want
people
to-
cutting videos like in real time, putting them out.
If you're not alienating people, you're not
doing
your
it
job.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not doing it right.
I
It's
agree.
like
We've been at like 990. That's what's so annoying. Now we're at 955. But you're right. Maybe that's the problem. If we were shitting on more people, maybe I call people in. I should be calling them out. Yeah.
Who would you like to call out? I'll do it.
Let's see. Who should we call out? I don't know. You know what? I have to start ignoring this because it's going to drive me crazy. It's like when you're, it's like a watched, what is it? A watched pot never boils or whatever. It's fine. I'm sure I'll grill everyone and make it get to 1,000 after you go because I don't want to hold you.
All right. Do you have more guests lined up or?
No, but it's an early night this is going to be this is a short 3-hour stream.
All right.
That's short
okay.
for
Wow.
me,
And you do this how many times a week?
Twice.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you also do the
Useful
show with
Idiots.
Matt, the Useful Idiots,
Yeah.
which I have to admit I watch every week.
Wow, thank you.
Not live, but
Right.
I watched it.
It's not live, so if you said live, I'd know you were a liar.
Oh, I didn't know because it's
Yeah.
like most of these shows are they're live and then you see them.
Right, exactly.
The recording. But it's like I'm a big fan of the 4 food groups. And
the 4 food groups. Yeah,
Democrats suck, Republicans suck.
Isn't that weird? Isn't that
is
terrible?
Is it weird? Is it terrible? Yeah.
Yeah. What do you? Any suggestions for this show? I need more segments. What could we do? What could we do? We'll brainstorm. We'll have to brainstorm.
Yeah, we'll have to think about
maybe
that.
Hasbara myth of the month or something. I don't know. Let's
and I want to also give a shout out to the Electronic Intifada podcast because we have just, which is fantastic. It's produced and hosted by my colleagues Nora Barrows-Friedman and Asa Winstanley. Nora is in California. Asa is in London. So it's very transatlantic.
Oh yeah, I like
that. And transglobal. And we just and we've been doing the podcast for many years, and it's really great. If I say so myself.
What's it called?
It's called the Electronic Intifada Podcast. So we keep it simple, and you can find it, in all the podcasty places. But the thing I want to say is that we just made the first move into video.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we put out our first video podcast just last week, and it was a bit piloty, so it's not. I mean, I thought it was great, but we're still working out, all the kinks and everything. But it was really fun, and it's a lot of good information.
Yeah.
So I hope people will also check out the Electronic Intifada website and the podcast.
Yeah. Is the podcast featured on it? Because I'm always on that website, and I don't actually know if I've...
yeah, let me take a look.
It's not on the top. You need it on the top, because it's features, opinion, analysis, reviews, blogs.
Yeah, no, it is. Like, if you go to the front
I see.
page,
It has a SoundCloud thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it has that SoundCloud thing, and if you click on it, it takes you to all the podcasts, and if you click on the top one right now, podcast episode 30, you also see the video.
Okay, let's see.
We also have a YouTube channel. So
subscribe, guys. Everyone subscribe.
Hang on. Oops, I didn't mean to start it. Yeah,
we
have the Electronic Intifada YouTube channel, and I've always wanted to say to people, smash that subscribe button.
Yeah. Smash that like, smash that subscribe button. But you have to tell them to smash that subscribe button and then hit the bell, which doesn't land as much because they have to hit subscribe, right? And then the bell. Apparently, that's what people have told me.
Yeah, I don't know all the jargon, all the lingo yet.
Yeah, subscribe, guys.
Yeah.
Here, look, watch this. Boom, I subscribed.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh.
2020 هذه الأمور كلها اختلفت.
All right, let's go back to this thing. Yeah, it's good. I should talk. My thing isn't very. My website's like 1,000 years old. But yeah, you should make it. This just makes it look. Honestly, if I'm being honest, this and this and this, these are all recognizable. The SoundCloud thing isn't quite as recognizable. And people, I think, tend to kind of ignore these things because it's just like, oh, look at our social media. But you want to be highlighting the podcast, I think.
We do. When a new episode goes up,
Okay,
it will
you
appear
make a
on
post?
the
Okay, good.
we make a post. It goes up. It goes out on our follow us at Intifada on Twitter, on Facebook. We're there, and on Instagram. I think we're not on TikTok and Twitch and all those.
I want to be.
things,
Yeah,
but
I'm gonna get on TikTok. I'm on it, but I have to start using
how
it.
do you have how do you have time?
I don't. And then you should come on. Let's pick a movie that's on Amazon Prime. If there's any movie or show on Amazon Prime that you want to watch, even though Amazon's evil, if there's any movie on there, we'll do a watch party.
Oh, okay.
So find
All
something
right.
we can hate watch it. Like it could be a hate watch, or it could be something we actually like. ABCD, yeah, writes, I've been watching Nora Barrows Friedman since her days. Where'd it go? Producing. Where'd that go? I just had it. This is frustrating. Hold on. Someone's giving Nora Barrows Friedman. Did she go to Wesleyan? Maybe. I've been watching Nora Barrows Friedman since her days producing the Flashpoint show back in 2007. Katie should bring her and Asa on sometime. Sure, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Nora is great. Asa has done such spectacular reporting particularly on the so-called anti-Semitism crisis in the UK Labour Party, where false accusations of anti-Semitism effectively sank Jeremy Corbyn. The biggest left-wing surge in modern British history was basically destroyed by false allegations of anti-Semitism. And so Asa has done just a fantastic job meticulously reporting that, really pissing off the Israel lobby in the UK with his brilliant investigative reporting. And those are the kind of things we talk about. And I think we bring something different because we talk about, and I'm very grateful that you've had me on to talk about this, but you cover so many things that are important. Whereas we can focus more and get in depth into some of the issues related to Palestine and Israel and all that stuff. So do check us out.
Yeah. Well, oh, we didn't co-write a tweet. We'll co-write a tweet next time. Unless you want to co-write a tweet. You're tired, but I've been derelict. I like to sometimes co-write a live tweet. We could mock that guy, but it's late. We'll do it next time. I got to keep people coming back. I got to keep, we got to keep people in demand. Can't give them everything at once.
All right, and I'm gonna, as soon as I hang up, I'm gonna open the YouTube on my phone and on my iPad and on my laptop and see if I can't help boost it, artificially boost it to 1,000.
Yeah, please, and contact someone in Russia. See if you can get in touch with a bot farm, a troll farm.
Yeah,
maybe they can elevate it too.
Yeah, actually, I'll just get my toaster and my coffee maker to log onto your website too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect. All righty. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. It was a lot of fun, and thanks for helping us get the word out.
Of course, and come back.
With pleasure.
Great.
All right.
Bye.
Good night.
That was great. What a great guest. Really great guest. Well, guys, I'm not going to stay up to... I'm a little annoyed, but this is myself. I really would have liked to have gotten to 1,000. And you know what? If we were 600, I wouldn't care. But seeing that we were at 990 just breaks the heart. But you know what? Who cares? Because it was a great show. Maybe, guys, next time, we just need people to tweet stuff live and videos and share. I'm going to have a share thing. But here's who I do want to thank, okay? Ready? I want to thank the 3 new people who became Patreons during the show. And the font is not very big. Okay, here we go. Ready? We got John, Some Poor Fool. That's the name. And Priyankar Sarkar. Oh, I read your last name too. Sorry, I don't know if people want me to read their second. Their second name. Okay, he lied when he said Arabs were involved in the Holocaust. I'm not sure. All right. Well, guys, quality over quantity. Yeah. Guys, this has been great. You can also share on Facebook Instagram. I should have shared on Instagram and Facebook better, more. I can't stay up, guys. I need to practice good sleep hygiene. Why do people, my name is, it's called The Katie Halper Show, which is funny because sometimes people write Katy, which doesn't offend me that much. It's just funny because, yeah. Anyway, this was really great. Make sure you subscribe. If you want to donate some support, you can do that at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Do we have more? Oh my God. No. Happy birthday to Brad again, in case you're just tuning in. You know what? I didn't get that 1,000. Let's see if we can get 1 or 2 Patreons just at the $1 level. I'll stay on for 5 more minutes. Let's see if we can do it. Let's see. Let's see if we can do it, guys. Let's see. What could I do to incentivize that? I don't know. I don't know what I could do. Oh, you want me to bring on Bodhi? How about that? I'll give you a minute of Bodhi. Hold on. Jesus Christ. Is Bo's here? Where is she? Bobo. Bobo. Bo, where is she? Bobo. Where is she? I think she must be downstairs. Come on. Yay. Come here. Bodhi, your audience wants you. Come on. Just for a second. All right, Bobo, you got to take out your toy because now or else people can't see your face. Your beautiful punum. Hold on. All right, hold on. I'll get back to you. Hold on. Just say hi. Oh, we got some patrons here. Brad, can you yeah. Let's see. Oh my God, we got some new patrons all because of you, Boo Boo. Listen to her little snorty noises. Listen. Amy! Thanks, Amy! Look at her on the mic. Listen. Shh. Hold on, listen. Okay, she's not making her little snorty noises. She's like the cutest. It's not even funny. Happy birthday again. Oh, 8 rep. Can you make that font bigger, Nick? Everyone say hi to Nick, who's, let's see, he's putting these in notes. Everyone say hi to Nick. Say thank you, Nick. Say thank you, Brad. And say hi, Brad. And also say happy birthday, Brad. A-Rem. I'm not wearing my glasses. What do you think, Boo? How cute is she? I'm not just saying that because she's really my sister. She's my parents' dog. I'm going to have to do... Guys, what else should I do for Patreon? Do you guys want a Discord? Should I have, like, office hours or whatever? Mark Waldron. Thank you, Mark Waldron. Look at Bodhi. She's so excited. I'm only going to stay on for 1 more minute. So if you want to shout out on this episode... Oh, my God. Patrick Walker. Okay, Nick, you're really actually trying. Can you just grab it and make it bigger by grab it by the corners type thing? Like, grab it by the corners type thing? Because I just can't see it. Patrick Walker again? Oh my goodness. Oh my God, maybe Patrick Walker has a twin who has the same name. Okay, that's a little better. Barbara, thank you, Barbara. Look at this little girl. She's so cute. She does the cutest thing. If I rub her belly and I stop, she goes like this with her paws. I'll videotape that. All right, cool. Guys, 1 more minute. I'm going to count down, okay? Let's see. 11:10. It'll be 1 and something because I can't put her down. Oh my God, Trey. Thank you, Trey. Look how excited she is. Oh my God, Nicholas, thank you for increasing your support. You're signed up for the $5 rate. What do people who watch the stream live, what would you guys want for the $5 rate? I'll listen. Can you hear it? Independent left.news. I guess we can super chat again. Yeah. Listen to her little snorts. Hold on. Do you hear that? My mom's saying 30 seconds. Mom, you got to come on soon. You got to come on this week for a rock. Well, thank you guys. Love you. Mark, Patrick, Barbara, and Trey. Also, John, Some Poor Fool, and Priyanka. Really, thank you. She's so cute. Oh my God, Chrissy. Wow. She's so cute. All right. Well, guys, I think I passed my... Yes, it's 11:11. Zachary. Oh, my God. Whoa, Zachary, $50 a month. OMG. Wow. That's going to get you a happy birthday on live, on video. Happy birthday. How you like that? All right. Well, I'm glad I stayed on to read that one. All right. Can I look at the chats now? Good night, everyone. Is there any final chats that I have to look at? Any final super chats? Can I look at the super chat thing? No. There. Yeah, thank you. All right, let's see if there are any. All right. It's not a he, it's a she, by the way. Yeah, thank you. Look at that. Happy birthday, Brad Bloom. Thank you for all you do. What else do we got? All right. Yeah, thank you. Oh, shout out to IndependentLeft.news, who does great work. Really great work. Everyone follow Independent. What is it? What's the social media? Sorry, Independent.news. Independent.news. If you put the handle in there, I will highlight the comment. Independent.news. You can, I'm sure. Independent.news. I'm sure you just do that. Oh my God, Robert, thanks for the super sticker. Wow. What? Oh, people are fighting about me. What did I do? Katie repeatedly clarified she was not censored. Oh yeah, only temporary. Yeah. Uh-oh. I remember fighting with Jordan about something. I think he called my dad a neoliberal, which I thought was kind of silly. All right. I'm definitely wishing for world peace. And thank you again so much, Zach. And good night, everyone. And oh my God, how cute is that? Independent Left.news. Listen to her. All right. I will see you guys later. Thank you. Subscribe. Hit the subscribe. Hit the bell. Hit the like. Happy birthday, Brad. Thank you, Nick and Brad. Thank you to all the guests who came on tonight. And we will see you Thursday. And remember, patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Subscribe, like. Bye. Oh, that was a good one.